Prime Minister apologises to Parliament and vows to get on with the job as a former Conservative Chief Whip calls on him to resign.
Good morning. It is 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 20th of April. This is Breakfast on GBNews with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, it's politics, and the Prime Minister faced calls to resign last night as he apologised to Parliament, saying that he acknowledged the hurt and anger. A former Tory Chief Whip, Mark Harper, rounded on the PM, saying he was no longer worthy of his position.
Russian forces have captured the city of Crimea in the Donbass as they continue their assault in the east of Ukraine. President Zelensky told Western leaders last night that the war would already be over if Ukraine had the weapons it needed.
And Prince Harry has told a chat show in America that he's making sure the Queen is protected and has the right people around her. What do you make of that? It comes ahead of the monarch's 96th birthday tomorrow.
And as always, you can join in any of our discussions. Email us, GBNews@GBNews.uk, or tweet at GBNews.
Prince Harry is saying the Queen should be protected. She needs the right people around her to spare her from what?
Well, exactly.
Him, and Princess
or
Pinocchio?
Perhaps not spare him, her. You know what I mean?
From
anyway.
him. Yes, I see what you mean. Keep her guard down, have more of his type of advisor around her.
Or, you know, maybe less Prince Andrew walking her in to Westminster Abbey. Perhaps it's about that. Let us know your thoughts this morning.
Okay, and you've done all that at GBViews News and all that business anyway. We just want to hear from you. Here's our top story today. The Prime Minister faced the House of Commons last night and apologised for breaking the law over Partygate.
As soon as I received the notice, I acknowledged the hurt and the anger. And I said that people had a right to expect better of their Prime Minister. And I repeat that, Mr. Speaker, again in the House now.
Well, in his address, he also vowed to deliver the priorities of the British people, adding that he had spent the day discussing the Ukraine crisis with world leaders like Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron. Well, in his response, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, told the story of a man called John Robinson. Let's take a listen to that.
When his wife died of COVID, John and his family obeyed the Prime Minister's rules. He didn't see her in hospital. He didn't hold her hand as she died. If the Prime Minister had any respect for John and the millions like him who sacrificed everything to follow the rules, he'd resign. But he won't, because he doesn't respect John. He doesn't respect the sacrifice of the British public. He is a man without shame.
Well, the Prime Minister will address the Commons again today. Prime Minister's questions, and tomorrow will face a vote that will decide if there should be a formal investigation in whether he deliberately misled Parliament. Political reporter at Reaction, Bill Boycott, joins us now in the studio. So we just had, it seemed like all day and all night last night, questions to him, seemed to go on forever. He's going to have to do it again today.
He will, unfortunately. And the thing is that he'll have to brazen out all that criticism once again from Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, but this time he has 6 questions rather than one elongated response that he had yesterday. Quite a powerful one, actually, especially that anecdote of John Robinson, who was actually a constituent in Lichfield of Michael Fabricant, the Tory MP, who's been a firm defender of the Prime Minister. You know, he was the one that got a lot of stack, I think, last week when defending the Prime Minister, saying, well, actually, teachers and nurses, they were also having drinks after work as well. So he'll have to do that again, but at the same time have to show that he's trying to move on from the crisis, come across as...
Here's what I think now. It doesn't matter who was having drinks or eating Quality Street or whatever the heck they were doing after work. The point is, they weren't supposed to be. So we can say they did it and they did it or whatever. If they had been caught, they would have been prosecuted or given a fixed penalty notice. He was caught. Why do we keep now deflecting all this whole issue?
I think it's because Labour MPs want him out. They want him ousted, hence why the Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyles, accepted a motion by the Labour Party to have a vote in the Commons tomorrow as to whether he should be investigated by the Standards and Privileges Committee, as whether he broke the ministerial code and deliberately misled Parliament, although it does seem slightly performative with the majority that the Tory government have.
Well, let's talk about that, because he is expected, as you say, to survive that vote tomorrow, not to be under pressure to have all of these emails and details of the Sue Gray report published in this parliamentary inquiry. But it's not a free vote. This is a heavily whipped vote tomorrow. Mark Harper, though, however, former supporter of the Prime Minister, wanted him to be, he voted for him to become leader, supported him in Brexit, put it in a letter to the 1922 committee. Only one, though, to speak up yesterday as a backbencher. Do you think he's the only one thinking that, or could there be more trouble ahead?
I think there's lingering doubts within Tory MPs as to whether Boris Johnson is the right man to lead the Tory party going forward. I think publicly, at least in my calculation, there's only 12 Conservative MPs who actually think that the Prime Minister should face voters at the next election, which is predicted to be either 2023 or 2024. But many MPs thinking actually now's not the right moment, given we've got the war in Ukraine, the Prime Minister's having to deal with the cost of living crisis, having to put his energy strategy into practice as well. And I think what you'll expect today from Prime Minister's questions is you're going to have a lot of open questions from Tory MPs, defending the Prime Minister, trying to move on from the crisis given the poor polling that the government are having to suffer, and show that
So Bill, you're saying they're trying to move on from this crisis, but come whenever the general election is, he's toast. They're not going to put him forward. Is that what you're saying?
It's not looking rosy at the moment electorally for the party. I think in the council elections, they're definitely expected to lose many councillors, hundreds. I think I saw one projecting that he's losing up to 800 councillors. And current polling suggests that the Conservative Party are set to lose many Red Wall MPs, and also seats in which they've had a stronghold for many years as well.
Just want to say to people watching, because many of you would be Red Wall voters as well, has he lost your vote or not? Has anything changed or not? Tweet us at GBNews.
Yeah, it will be interesting, this by-election in Wakefield, that some discussion that the Liberal Democrats are doing really well there now, which just seems extraordinary, doesn't it? These former Red Wall seats turned Tory, now turning possibly yellow. I mean, we'll yet to see. But I suppose that shows the sense of a lot of people in the country of being sort of politically homeless at the moment, because politicians aren't necessarily doing anything for anyone.
Definitely, and I think the other problem for the Tory party is not only have they spawned a swathe of apathy among the British population, of politics, of the Conservative Party, but the Conservative Party are starting to lose some of its values as well. You saw a YouGov poll yesterday showing that now the Tories are no longer leading Labour on the economy. If you think back in the 2019 election, Boris Johnson versus Jeremy Corbyn, the Conservative Party had a 32-point lead in terms of the economy, and now they're on zero because they've, ditched its principles as a low-tax, pro and entrepreneurial government as well. So it's going to be a tough, but I think if Boris Johnson can wave out this current Partygate scandal, hoping that there's not going to be any more fines, and as well as survive the May elections and indeed the rest of the parliamentary year, then there's a good chance that he will be leader for the Conservative Party come the next general election.
Interesting times indeed.
So he's been hit right, left and centre. You've got Partygate, you've got Ukraine, you've got Rwanda, which is now taking up a lot of time and the way people think. There was an interesting jostle in the House yesterday between Yvette Cooper from Labour and the Home Secretary Priti Patel, who wasn't taking any criticism that Yvette Cooper had to offer.
Mm-hmm. And you also had criticism from Theresa May as well, the former Prime Minister, the person supposedly behind the hostile environment as Home Secretary as well as Prime Minister, because the problem here is that none of the details around the scheme really been fleshed out. One of the key criticisms from Yvette Cooper is, well, there's £120 million for this trial with Rwanda, but how many people will that entail over how many years? And also there's there's now this worry as to, well, actually, when they do get sent off to Rwanda and they do get processed, so they're basically stuck there and they can't come back to the UK.
Of course, extra powerful from Theresa May because she used to be Home Secretary for so long, and she's renowned for her attention to detail.
Please let me tell you a story on that. Right? Here's a story on that, right? So I'm interviewing attention to detail Home Secretary Theresa May on Sky News, right? And I say to her, there are riots in Tottenham, and I say, do you intend, Home Secretary, to issue water cannon, bring water cannon onto the streets to fight these riots? Please, I'd love a close-up here. This is lovely. This Petra, she goes, oh, where's two? This one. That is not the way we police in the United Kingdom. Really, said I? The last time I looked, there are 30 of them sitting at Belfast Airport, water cannon, which had just been deployed. This was a Monday morning, and it was a Sunday. I'd just flown out of Belfast, and there had been riots on the streets of Belfast, and 6 water cannon obviously deployed there. But she couldn't tell the difference as Home Secretary between what was the United Kingdom and what was England. But there we go. She fell. She fell right. That's the woman with attention to detail. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed, Bill. Lovely to talk to you. Bill Bucket there, who's the political reporter at Reaction.
Now, day 56 of the invasion of Ukraine, and Russia is continuing its large-scale assault on the Donbass, capturing the city of Crimea. Ukrainian authorities say the intensity of fire by Russian troops towards Kharkiv, Dnipro and the Donbass region has increased significantly, while the situation at Mariupol remains deadlocked, with the Russian army reportedly blocking attempts at creating humanitarian corridors. President Zelensky made clear that the Ukraine would continue to battle any attempted advance by the Kremlin. Let's get more on this now from the director of the Crisis Research Institute in Oxford, Mark Almond, who joins us now. Good morning to you, Mark. Should we talk first of all then about Putin's public statements yesterday as he launched this clearly highly orchestrated invasion of the Donbass with more nuclear threats? Is this saber-rattling, or do we have to take this extremely seriously, do you think?
Well, I think if we remember that the Russian Foreign Minister said right up to the day of the invasion that Russia had no intention of invading, the worry now is that he said yesterday that Russia has no intention of using nuclear weapons. And so you wonder whether this is reassurance or actually a threat, much more likely. Because the problem for the Russians is that even though they have reinforced their army on the ground, they brought up much more artillery power and also air power, they still haven't been able to achieve a decisive breakthrough. The resistance of the Ukrainians is very dogged, and the danger might be that the Russians, Putin himself, will decide, in order to break this deadlock, I should simply use a tactical nuclear weapon, which might only destroy, say, a square mile or so, but it would be a break of the taboo by a major power of using weapons of mass destruction, particularly nuclear weapons, which we haven't seen used since August 1945.
OK, we're talking about a 300-mile front line in the Donbass, a completely different scenario for the Ukrainian resistance to deal with. How do you think that they are going to cope with this new threat? Lots of support being pledged from the West, notably not from Italy or from Germany, though. Are there cracks appearing in that alliance, or do you think Ukraine has the support it needs to react to this new threat?
Well, everybody pays lip service to the idea of helping Ukraine, and a lot of countries, Britain particularly, have been supplying weapons that are very useful against Russian armoured columns, as we saw back at the end of February and March when they tried to attack Kiev itself. The problem today is that this is a much bigger battle. The Ukrainians are using what the Americans say is roughly a week's supply of ammunition and anti-tank weapons in 3 days. So, in other words, the stockpiles are depleting very rapidly, and the Russians have an enormous stockpile of standard ammunition, artillery shells, rockets, and so on. So unless the West steps up its delivery of weapons to Ukraine, the risk will be, however brave, however determined the Ukrainian soldiers are to resist, they will simply be swamped by firepower. That's one of the reasons why the Russians have been striking deep into Ukraine to try and block the supply routes coming from Europe, coming from the NATO countries, and to disrupt the ability of the Ukrainian army to re-equip itself. And so really the next few days will be pretty decisive. If the Russians can both tie down the Ukrainian army with heavy artillery fire so it can't maneuver to fight them, and at the same time can gain some maneuverability itself, and stop Western resupply, or at least limit it to the point that the Ukrainians are using more ammunition than they're getting, then Putin might have a hope of winning the war quickly. That said, his hopes have clearly been dashed for a quick victory. He expected it to be 4 or 5 days, perhaps in February. Now we are in the middle, towards the end of April. And the more this fighting goes on, the more Russians themselves must begin to question, including Russian soldiers, is this a war that we should be fighting? Is it a strategy that is actually working?
And how much of the truth are they actually getting? Mark Almond, really interesting to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much. That is Mark Almond, Director of Crisis Research Institute in Oxford. Thank you.
6:15 is the time. A very good morning to you, wherever you're watching or listening from. Today's top stories are these. The Prime Minister has apologised to MPs for breaking COVID laws during lockdown in June 2020. He addressed the Commons for the first time since he was fined before holding a private meeting with Conservative politicians. Conservative MP and former Chief Whip Mark Harper published a letter saying he's lost confidence in Boris Johnson and he's no longer worthy of being the Prime Minister.
Russia's handed out a fresh ultimatum to Ukrainian soldiers holding out in a steel plant in the besieged city of Mariupol to surrender by 2 p.m. Moscow time. Meanwhile, the US, Canada and the UK have agreed to send more military weaponry to the country. The White House says new sanctions are being prepared against Russia.
Prince Harry says the Queen was on great form when he and his wife visited her in Windsor last week. In an interview with an American broadcaster, the Duke of Sussex added he wanted to make sure Her Majesty was protected and had the right people around her.
I can almost hear people shouting at the telly hearing that. We'll have to get a clip of it a little bit later on, but, sort of saying, I just wanted to make sure that she has the right people around her. Is that a Messiah complex? Does he know what's best for the Queen, Prince Harry? Or does he have a point? Was she badly advised recently, letting her favoured son, Prince Andrew, walk her into her late husband's memorial? Those are the questions I'm sure lots of you want the answers to. Somebody who has views on it.
Yeah, somebody who has got views on it is the royal commentator Richard Jobson, who joins us now. My friend, good morning to you. When Harry talks about when Harry talks about being surrounded by the right people, are they to protect the Queen from him, or does he want his right people? It's quite an arrogant and contradictory piece of advice, surely.
Well, it's narcissism in the extreme. Is that this is a guy that has already seen his grandmother for a couple of years, and for a while since the funeral, and that was only fleeting. I mean, I think actions speak louder than words, and Prince Charles, in particular, has been stepping up and supporting his mother with actions, and also all of her children, people like and daughters-in-law like Sophie Wessex and Camilla have been pretty much there a lot of the time behind the scenes, as has Prince William. So I think for him to sort of waltz in, leaving his Netflix crew just at the door, and then start talking about protecting his grandmother is slightly bizarre, to be honest.
I mean, he made these comments, didn't he, in a sit-down with NBC's Today Show presenter, which is a big American show. It's due to air on their breakfast show today. Actually, we've got a clip, so let's take a little listen.
How did it feel being back? Being with her?
Being with her, it was great. It was just so nice to see her. She's on great form. She's always got a great sense of humour with me, and I'm just making sure that she's, protected and got the right people around her.
Well, you make her laugh. That's what she always says. Did you do it again?
Yes, I did. Both Megan and I had tea with her, so it was really nice to catch up with her. And home for me now is for the time being, it's in the States, and it feels that way as well.
Does it?
Yeah. We've been welcomed with open arms, and it's got such a great community up in Santa Barbara. So
you feel like that's home more for you?
Yeah.
Didn't look convinced, did he? There, did he? Did he look convinced?
Well,
that feels like home.
Not really.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, the other thing is, I think the words with her about the meeting. Of course, he had to meet his father first with Camilla, and that was a very short meeting, from what I understand, and their relationship has been particularly strained. I think there's a sense of it being let down on both sides. And we've got this book coming out, which is pretty much going to sort of blow a lot of things out the water as well. So I don't think. I mean, although these are baby steps in terms of a reconciliation or a rapprochement between the Meghan and Harry and the royals. I can see it all blowing up in the face again with this book, and clearly the relationship with his father's not particularly great at the moment. And I don't know how long Harry can carry on being this court jester either. You know, he can make her laugh. You know, well, I don't think she's been laughing too much about what happened in the last couple of years. Particularly, you know, the Thanksgiving service, and you know, she's been through a lot, the Queen, and Harry and Meghan have contributed to that. It's not just you know, the Andrew saga and other things. So I don't know. You can't just waltz in and say, you know, I made a laugh and then waltz out again with your Netflix crew and think all is great.
Well, it's very important for their Netflix crew that they are seen on the balcony during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. And there was talk, a lot of talk yesterday, a lot of press talk that he and Meghan would be there. Now, I can't see much laughing. You talk about the upcoming book. With those who know they're going to be featured in the book, like Camilla. How on earth could they share the same platform or balcony?
What, without someone being thrown off? I think it must be very difficult for Camilla, because she's come a long way. And to be named the next Queen Consort was a very significant moment for her. And a lot of people that hadn't particularly been fans of hers have sort of welcomed her. And I think, you know, I think in terms of the future of the monarchy and the future of the royal family, it was very significant. Now, to have Harry now going to be writing a book, ostensibly about his life, but it's going to include, we dare say, all that is anticipated, his tricky relationship with Camilla. It's not going to be very helpful. On the balcony, look, there's talk, there's no way that Netflix will be following them into the palace, but, you know, you only have to buy the footage of them on the balcony from various other media organisations, or do it yourself from afar. So, you know, it's all going to be part of the documentary of seating them right in the heart of things that matter. You know, they're going to have this fly-on-the-wall documentary, which they're getting paid an awful lot of money for. And they're, in a way, utilising the family to help sell that. And I think that doesn't sit well with me. I'm sure it doesn't sit well with other people.
Well, we're going to have Robert back in the next hour of the programme. If you've got something to say to him about what he's talking about, or to contribute to the whole discussion, gbviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews. Robert Jobson, for the moment, thank you very much indeed for your take on things. We'll see what people have to say.
Thank you.
Now, coming up, it is the International Cannabis Day, known as 420. We'll be speaking to our reporter about that after this short break. First of all, here's your forecast.
Hello, good morning. I'm Stephen Keats with your latest Met Office forecast. The next few days offer a warmer day today, but then it will turn cloudier towards the end of this week as we pick up this brisk easterly wind, and temperatures for some of us coming down a bit. But first thing this morning, though, we've got a fair amount of sunshine out there, particularly for parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland once the fog lifts. Elsewhere, across England and Wales, variable amounts of clouds. It won't be sunny everywhere, but most places will see some sunshine at times through the day. Perhaps a cloud across parts of Wales and southwest England, thick enough in the afternoon for a few showers, but far less showers than what we saw through the course of yesterday. And for many of us, it will be a warmer day away from East Coast with that breeze coming in off the sea. Highs in the south this afternoon, probably 18, 19, perhaps 20 degrees. Now, any showers we do have during this evening will soon fade away. 1 or 2 for northwest Scotland for a time as well. And then into Thursday morning, I think a lot of dry, fine weather around. Again, some clear spells, but I think areas of cloud will occasionally ingress from the North Sea across parts of eastern England, parts of the coast of eastern Scotland and northeast England too. And like with recent nights, it'll be chilly in the countryside with perhaps a touch of frost in places, but most towns and cities holding up between 4 and 8 Celsius. Then for tomorrow, then, it's a mostly dry picture across the country. We'll start to pick up quite a brisk and gusty easterly wind, and this will bring in areas of cloud off the North Sea from time to time. Not cloudy everywhere, but I think more cloud for many places what we'll see through the course of today. And again, the coasts of eastern Scotland and northeast England could be quite grey and misty for much of the day. Now, temperatures down a notch on Thursday compared to what we'll see this afternoon, but still highs of 17 or 18 Celsius. Now, for the end of the week, we've got low pressure diving down towards the Bay of Biscay, being some very unsettled weather here. High pressure to the north of the UK, and the net effect of this is a brisk easterly flow. You can see the little bumps in the isobars here, always a sign that to the west of high ground, could see some quite gusty conditions. This will feed in areas of cloud, but some sunny spells for Thursday. More cloud, though, generally for Friday and Saturday. A few showers by this stage as well. And whilst west is generally best for temperatures, generally speaking, it's a bit cooler.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Still to come on today's show, it's cheaper and, in some cases, it's more nutritious. We'll be discussing the rise of tinned food with the chef, Theo Michaels, at around 6:45 as the cost of living crisis continues.
And as a new report outlines the dangers of waiting for a diagnosis on diabetes, we will meet a nurse who's managed to, well, she hasn't reversed her condition. She's put it into, what's the term they use? You can never reverse it, remission or whatever. That's what they do really as well. Anyway, you can help yourself. 8:20, we're talking about those medical matters. If you've got a diabetes story, if you're finding it difficult to get treatment, diagnosis, how you actually manage your sugars, are you good at that? Let us know. Get in touch this morning. We'd like to hear your story.
Yes, you can do that the usual way. Go to email us at gbnews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
So today is the 20th day of the fourth month, commonly known as 420.
In America.
Well, apparently, never heard of it myself. But anyway, today is 420, and if you are a cannabis enthusiast, that date has become a representation of your culture and a day that is observed by consumers of the drug around the world, of which I have to say I am one.
Yes, the legal form of it, which we will get on to.
Why are you spoiling the story?
Yeah, well, no, I'm also a big fan of it. We were swapping stories the other night.
No, last night. Let me just tell you the story. So last night, there I was, very depressing night last night. There was football on last night, and it got so bad, but it was keeping me awake, and I had to get away from it, but I couldn't sleep. And then I thought, I'll have a bit of that cannabis stuff that goes on, CBD oil. Works a treat.
Yeah?
Works a treat. I was very happy.
Yeah, I have the gummies.
Yes.
But I just have half of one because I'm scared to take a whole one. But I'm very sensitive to things, so I didn't want to overdose.
I practically drank a bottle of it last night, and it worked well.
Recommend that. Yeah.
So anyway, possessing cannabis, we should say cannabis, the plant, the weed, is illegal in Britain unless it is prescribed by a medical profession. In 2018, the government legalised the use of CBD oil derived from the plant, which is what I was talking about.
Yeah, and that CBD market was estimated to be worth around £690 million. So it's a real growing industry. RGB News reporter Bradley Harris is in Cumbria this morning, speaking to Nick Hewitt, who is the owner of a CBD oil cafe in the area.
An oil cafe?
Yeah, you can have it in your tea. What else can you have it in, Bradley?
Yeah, morning both. You can have it in lots of things actually, CBD, and there's lots of products here in the cafe that you can have CBD in. We'll get into that in a little moment. But it's interesting, isn't it? 420 Day. Not many people know where it came from, how it started. Some people say it started in 1971 with a group of friends that were smoking cannabis after school at 4:20 p.m. Today, though, it's known for a variety of reasons. Some people use it to try and smoke cannabis out in public. Others use it to try and legalise it here in the UK and educate people. But we're going to get into cannabis and CBD in a bit more detail with Nick Hewitt, who runs Westlakes Hemp Cafe, CBD Cafe here in Cumbria. Good to have you with us. Just coming a bit closer there, Nick. I just want to chat to you because 420 Day means a lot of reasons. What do you think of today, the celebration of cannabis? Should we be putting a spotlight on it in this way?
I think we absolutely 100% should be putting a spotlight on it, and I think up until now this is kind of the only real way that we've been able to do it. I think there's been a cannabis community underlying since time began, really. No, it's a plant, it's a millennia old. We've got people who've used it for a very long time, and I think now, you know, the CBD industry is getting bigger, the cannabis industry across the world is getting bigger, and I think it's about time that people started listening to what the community have got to say about it, really, and if this is the way we've got to do it, then that's how we do it.
And the CBD industry is massive at the minute. Just tell me a bit about the cafe and your journey. Why did you start a CBD cafe, the only one at the time in Cumbria when you launched it in August last year?
Yeah, so I have got quite significant mental health conditions. I've got borderline personality disorder, bipolar type 2 and PTSD. And there's another one in there called cyclothymia, so it's quite significant. And a few years ago, I was flooded out of my flat in Carlisle during Storm Desmond, hit rock bottom, wasn't for the first time. And one of my dad's friends, you know, he was a psychotherapist in America, and he'd said, "Have you thought about trying cannabis?" And I said, well, it's not legal in this country, we can't really do that. He's like, well, why don't you see if there's something similar or something close? So I went looking, and that's when I came across CBD. CBD, it's a derivative of the cannabis plant. It's, you know, it's extracted, and the strains that we get it from, there's less than 0.02% of THC. So THC is the drug that essentially gets you stoned. That's what everyone associates with cannabis. However, our products and what I use is it's non-psychoactive, so you don't feel it in your head, you don't feel stoned. I started taking it, and I would say maybe a month or two later, I think, from going from suicidal, you know, I was on suicide watch, I was at rock bottom, depressed, couldn't get out of bed, really struggling with life. Started taking it, and again, even at the time, I was a bit like, oh, no, is this a bit of a fad, is it really going to work? Within a couple of months, my mood just started lifting. And I just thought, oh, wow, well, if it works for me, it could work for a lot of people. And I've never thought of it. I've been taking it for nearly 5 years now, and I haven't looked back. And the thought was there between me and my school friend, Luke. We just thought, well, if we feel this good by using it, what about everybody else? Now, when I first went looking for CBD, it was an absolute minefield. You know, I was going on faceless website, phone numbers, there was no faces to it, there was no pictures of anybody. When you were phoning people, you didn't know who it was. And I thought, well, I could change the industry, you know. If people are going to want to seek out cannabis with the stigma and discrimination that's around it, wouldn't it be nice if people had a face to come to, who they knew that they'd see my face on the website, that can come in the shop. So we started online in 2018, and we've kind of just progressed from there, yeah.
Well, Nick, it's great to have you with us on the show. Lots of products so you can have it in coffee, hot chocolate, you name it, it can be in it. Good to chat to you, Nick. That's Nick Hewitt from Westlakes Hemp here in Cumbria.
Oh, well, Bradley, very interesting, the different perspective on all of that. And, you know, for people, so many people watching, they will control their pain and various conditions with
anxiety.
CBD oil, yeah. And we're going to get them to talk to us, Bradley, and maybe, I mean, what's your view? Were you surprised by what you saw there today?
Yeah, I had no idea how many products you could actually have CBD in. I've never tried it before. You can have it in things as simple as a coffee. So I'm really surprised by it, Eamonn. Really surprised, yeah.
Well, I hope you've no need to try it, really, but there are various strengths of it, and I have had prescriptive strengths which did not agree with me, it has to be said. It's quite funny, actually. But, you know, the moderate strength stuff, which takes away anyone suffering from chronic pain, or as Isabel was saying, has a need to reduce anxiety or just relax, just if you cannot sleep, if you've got insomnia, at night.
Yeah, better than the sleeping pills.
I would think
we
so.
can't do that with our job, can we?
No.
The next morning, we're still sleepy.
Yeah. And you don't really feel hungover with it the next day.
Not at all. Anyway, big advocates we are.
Thanks,
Thank you, Bradley. See you later. Look, stay with us. We're going to go through the papers this morning. We're joined today by David Mellor and Claire Muldoon. See you in a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.37 is the time. A very good morning to you. This is GB News at Breakfast with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel. Webster, thank you very much indeed for your company.
Let's bring you up to date with the latest headlines. And Boris Johnson has apologised to MPs for breaking COVID laws during lockdown in June 2020. He addressed the Commons for the first time yesterday since he was fined before holding a private meeting with Tory politicians. Conservative MP and former Chief Whip Mark Harper has published a letter saying he's lost confidence in Boris Johnson and that he's no longer worthy of being Prime Minister. Prime Minister is also calling for more weapons to be sent to Ukraine as Vladimir Putin continues his latest attack in the eastern Donbass region. On a call with US President Joe Biden and other world leaders, Boris Johnson stressed the critical need for further military support. And Prince Harry says the Queen was on great form when he visited her with wife Meghan in Windsor last week. In an interview with NBC that is going to air today, the Duke of Sussex added he wanted to make sure Her Majesty was protected and was surrounding herself with the right people.
Oh, there's so many stories, don't know where to begin. Prince Harry and being surrounded by the right people, David. A royal rumble, they're calling it in the Daily Mail. Who are these right people that he wants to be surrounded with?
I woke up this morning having been to an opera for 5 hours last night and thinking, I've got to go and see you. And I'm thinking, how can I cope with this? Then on came the news about Harry saying his granny needs to be protected. And I fell about. I mean, this was a real comic turn. The most best paid comedian couldn't be funnier than that. Oh. What is the man on? Or rather, what is he off? I mean, you just think to yourself, he is really showing signs. But I think what it is, his life is totally distorted now by becoming a sort of Kardashian-type figure where he's surrounded by people who want to photograph him because they're paying him lots of money for the privilege of filming him. And the Queen becomes important to him only because he has to see the Queen for his credibility on Netflix.
Got to be photographed, got to be on that balcony. He's bringing a book out where he's slagging off Camilla and maybe William and his father. How on earth, why wouldn't they just throw him over the balcony and her with him?
Could I mention one thing? And that is, I mean, I have no reason to believe, and in fact people say the Queen is still as sharp as a tack. I mean, physically, obviously, when you're 95, you and I will probably look a little bit sad about, getting around. But basically, she's bright. Do you imagine for a single solitary moment she didn't say to him, Harry, what's going on? Why are you out there in California? Why have you thrown over the family business?
Pinocchio was with them. She mightn't have brought that up.
Because it comes up in an Oprah interview at some stage. I read a very amusing article in The Spectator yesterday which said there is a possibility that Prince Harry is actually just very dim.
Oh, that's undoubtedly true. We know he's very dim because, I'm a sad old git. You're a young woman. But I remember all the stuff when Harry was at school, when he could barely count his fingers, Yeah.
Dear.
I'm not even sure he can now.
Here is, look, that's an unusual story. That got David laughing. This one, Claire, oh my goodness, you just could not make this up. This is in the Metro. And it's been reported that a burger company in Yorkshire, right, and they're in Otley, and they're the Otley Burger Company. They have a van, and the terrible thing is, awful thing is, they ran an advert on this van which said, with burgers this good, you'll leave your kids at home. What's the worst that could happen? Now, that's not the worst of this.
That's not the worst of it.
The worst of it is this slogan is attached to a picture of
Madeleine McCann and her mother, Kate McCann. And the tagline is, Happy Mother's Day to all the mums out there with this terrible... I mean, this is known now as a meme. And I had to get one of the girls to print this off because I'm not on Instagram and I hadn't seen this before. And I'm really pleased that I hadn't seen it before because it's one of the most disgusting things I think I've ever seen. And for that to become an advert for this company, who, incidentally, the byline at the bottom of their webpage is reserved, best reserved, and profanity beginning with B, ending in CH. It just smacks of a company. It sounds as if it's owned by quite a misogynistic man.
But hang on 1 minute. He's succeeded.
Yes.
Well,
Can
he
you
has.
imagine, again, when you woke up
Because we're talking
yesterday,
about this now. And
did you ever think we were going to be talking about a
No,
burger
I didn't,
firm?
Is it going to translate into business for him? Because I sure as heck would never buy anything from there out of principle.
Well, the saying, there's no news is bad news, or no bad news at all. It's hit the headlines. Mother's Day was the 17th of March or thereabouts, and we're now talking about this a month after. I think it's absolutely despicable that this sat around for over a month before the advertising agency actually caught on and banned it now. And well, I mean, I'm so pleased that it has been.
It's just amazing that there are people out there. There are people who are so sick and think like that, and that anything goes when it comes to getting a bit of attention or a bit of publicity, isn't it?
For those listening on the radio, the meme is quite shocking. It's got the face of Madeleine McCann sitting next to her mum, outreached with a glass in her hand, with burgers this good, as you said, Eamonn. You'll leave your kids at home. What's the worst that could happen? Happy Mother's Day to all the mums out there.
Yeah, bizarre. David, should we talk about economic decline? The IMF had rather gloomy forecasts for the recovery for the UK, worst out of the G7, having gone from the best economic growth.
I mean, they over-analyse these things, and so what they say has relevance for 24 hours, and then they'll be saying something completely different. But, this is the thing that I think people are not really focusing on. We now have the worst inflation for 30 years. And once you have bad inflation, everything costs more. I mean, this is truism, but what will cost more particularly is the cost of servicing our debt. As a result of the way that money has been thrown around like drunken sailors on COVID, many tens of billions of extra borrowing is going to have to be financed. We'll get back to the situation we were in the 70s when one of the biggest items of public expenditure was interest on previously incurred debt. And this is where, if I was a Conservative MP still, I would be asking myself, I think Boris is doing a very, very good job in Ukraine, and he really is, and it's a treat for me to be able to say something nice about him. It's not been easy to find anything, but now we do have something. But the worrying thing about Boris is a chuck the money around type guy. You know, he'd have been great in the 60s and 70s when that kind of policy prevailed. Unfortunately, it didn't solve the country's problems, but Boris is chucking public money away. He can't do that in this present situation. And so the question, if I was a Conservative MP, I'd be asking myself is, faced with these kind of headlines, is Boris the person to deal with
Because the IMF is saying this is as a direct result of the conflict in Ukraine, that the UK economy is now going to be the slowest growing. So, you know, you praise him for doing and leading, but also is that, you know, bad for us as a country?
But do the IMF, you know, I don't forget I was a Treasury Minister, we were very sceptical about the IMF, and a lot of it is headline seeking. What has really caused the problem in this country is the amount of money that's been spent shoring up the economy with all of these people effectively being paid not to work.
Yes, and, I agree from the further.
You know, that's the problem.
And that brings on another point about people should not really be working from home at the moment. Does Jacob Rees-Mogg have a point? Get the civil servants back into the offices to get the economy growing?
But the problem with that, you see, I mean, OK, Margaret Thatcher's government, which I was a member for 9 years, and I sound a sad old git, I know, but basically it was quite a tough-minded government.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jacob Rees-Mogg is a senior minister. What's he doing emoting emptily over all of this in the papers, saying they ought to get back to work? Why doesn't he go into his office and say, these people are going back to work? It's like watching a football. I'm going to the football tonight. It'll be one of the few joys of my life, I hope, in Chelsea against Arsenal. We might see some good players on the pitch. I feel when I'm watching Boris United, I'm seeing a lot of players who would not be playing for a decent football team. You know?
But people need to get back to the offices, though. You can't have people working from home indefinitely.
No, of course you can't. But the point I'm making is there's no point in Jacob Rees-Mogg saying it. He should be doing it.
Yeah. Claire, let's go to the whole Rwanda seconding these immigrants out to another country for processing. And you've taken a take in the Daily Telegraph, page 5, on BBC bias on this. From who says this?
Camilla Turner and Mason Boycott Owen are saying, and Boris Johnson himself has said, look, I think the BBC and Justin Welby, the leader of the Church of England, are more critical of the Rwandan plan set out to help immigrants and refugees coming over to Britain to start a new life than they are of Putin's invasion of Ukraine.
But of course they would say that it's not a plan that sets out to help these immigrants.
Well, of course they would, but then there's so much more behind these headlines than, you know, the prima facie part of it is you arrive in this country and then you are flown over to Rwanda. One, I would like to see the state of Rwanda at the moment. I don't think there's been many journalists been sent there to see the conditions, environmentally, not only geographically, but in terms of infrastructure. What is there to support people that need safe housing, safe tunnels of processing? Why do people want to come to Britain? The fact is they feel safer, they get good, they get housing, they get jobs, they get, you know, economic support. Would they get that in Rwanda? And also, Rwanda as a country have got less men there. They need more men there. So I think,
after a horrific genocide.
After a horrific genocide. But, you know, they are starting to build it up. Apparently, that's the thing no one knows. But this has been sold. Sorry, hang on a minute, David. This has been sold as a really bad thing behind the headline. But I think you need to look deeper behind the headline to see what's actually going on.
Well, let me look deeper.
We've got people dying trying to get to this country.
Let me look deeper behind the headlines. I spent 5 years as a Home Office Minister. Priti Patel wouldn't have been Home Secretary in those days. Priti Patel has failed at everything she's tried to do over this. She was going to give the French money so they would stop these people.
At Cali and the border. And she did give the French money.
Yeah, and it didn't work. Anyway, let me just finish. And then she was going to get the Navy to turn them back. That was never a practical proposition. What she has to do is to ensure that queue jumpers do not get access to the British legal system and, lawyers that you and I pay for who can then represent even hopeless cases. A lot of these people arrive. They are not genuine asylum.
No, all they need to mention at Border Force is asylum.
And they don't have their proper papers and all the rest of it. And I think the problem that we have is, Priti Patel is not an adequate Home Secretary. If she was an adequate Home Secretary, she would look at what, to me, is the key issue. How do you stop these people, just because they turn up on the beaches, getting access to the British legal system? They should be turned around and sent back. And, we're talking about saving public money. I mean, where's the public money saving in shipping these people out to Rwanda?
Cheaper to send them to eat.
Hell of a thing.
Or maybe it's a message that goes out to them before they cross the channel is, you're not getting into UK, you're going to be sent to Rwanda. Maybe that's enough to make them think, oh, maybe we'll just stay here.
But you've got slave traffickers, human traffickers, you've got people paying to come to this country to move on, and it's those people we need to stop.
Right, we got to move on. David Miller, Claire Muldoon, thank you. Back again in 40 minutes' time. The time is, if I can just see it here, 10 minutes to 7. And here are the news headlines you're waking up to.
As we've been discussing, the former Prime Minister Theresa May has questioned the legality of government plans to send migrants to Rwanda. She's warned the policy could lead to an increase in trafficking of women and children. The Home Secretary has defended the plan, saying they're legal and will tackle smuggling gangs who exploit loopholes in our existing laws.
Julian Assange could be extradited to America sooner than expected, as Westminster Magistrates Court is formally expected to issue the order today. It will then be down to the Home Secretary to approve, but the WikiLeaks founder's lawyers could still appeal to the High Court.
The Manchester United player Cristiano Ronaldo was absent in last night's clash with Liverpool following the announcement of the death of one of his newborn twins. A fan-led minute's applause was held in the 7th minute of the game in support of Ronaldo and his family.
Thousands of people with diabetes are being put at risk due to a backlog caused by the pandemic. The charity Diabetes UK says lives will be lost unless the government improves its services.
Now, as the cost of living crisis continues, a new survey has found that more people are turning to bulk buying and tinned food to try and save cash.
Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? With us now, the chef, Theo Michaels, and he's saying, see, Theo, you're basically saying we shouldn't be snobby about this because a lot of people can have an attitude about it's tinned food, it is not as good. What's the reality as far as you're concerned?
Well, I think there is a bad connotation wrapped around tinned food, but the reality of it is there are some fantastic ingredients. They're nutritious, they're preserved at the point of picking, and it gives people a chance to stock up on healthy foods. So the connotation is that tinned food tends to be unhealthy.
Yes.
But you get things like beautiful ripe tomatoes that you get to enjoy throughout all the seasons. So they're picked in the summer, and we get to enjoy that beautiful ripe tomato in the depths of winter, when we wouldn't normally. And also you get things like the lycopene, which is like that red pigment that you get in tomatoes and red fruits.
Gotcha.
Great antioxidant.
Well, what have you brought in? What have you brought in here? What are we going to have? Give us the forks and the plates. And
Okay, fork and a plate each. Mm-hmm. So this is a Greek-style sort of meze tapas dish.
Just back from Greece.
Oh, really? I was going to say, you've got a lovely glow about yourself today.
So this is a lovely Greek tapas dish now. So we're looking.
I'm going to grab those tins and have a look what tins you've
Okay,
got.
we're
going to look at what are these? Are these beans?
So they are gigantes blaggies. So they are basically Greek baked beans. So again, all out of a tin.
Yeah.
And it's brilliant because the great thing about the tin side of things as well is people think it's a cheap ingredient, but actually it's also about food waste. Ooh. So we're buying tin stuff. It's non-perishable, so it lasts for ages in the fridge in the store cupboard.
Garlic.
And so we're not losing money on wasting ingredients.
So
wasting food.
Actually, this isn't out of one tin. So as Isabel has gathered here are 3 tins. So we've got, first of all, we've got the sardines.
That'll be sardines, which is obviously really good brain food. Lots of really good fish oils.
Absolutely, really high in fish oils, really good omega oils. There's always a notion that for calories, for instance, and I don't advocate calories being a sign of healthy or non-healthy. We need calories. But if you buy fish, for instance, in olive oil, the calorie count will be higher than the fresh counterpart. But it's a good oil still to have.
It's a good oil.
It's a good oil.
So we've got the sardines in there. Those beans.
Cannellini beans. This is a favourite of mine, I have to say. Yeah, they're just delicious. They're sort of buttery, creamy. You could almost make a hummusy type.
You can make a lovely hummus out of them. They're so versatile as well, and it's the convenience factor. You haven't got to sit there, overnight, letting them soak in. Who needs the faff? Who's got the time in life?
No, honestly, Theo. Honestly, I'm not just saying this the way people do on TV, saying, "Oh, it's delicious." It's
delicious. Yeah. Well, no, I'm not going to double dip from your fork. Much as I love you dearly, I'll leave it to you. But it was delicious. I could taste some garlic in there.
Yeah, there's little hints of garlic, a little bit of smoked paprika. But the great thing is, this is, it's pennies to make this, and you can feed a family. Add that with some vegetables on the side. Again, you can use tinned vegetables for it, and you can feed a family really cheap.
Okay, so that is good, and I can totally see, and I would use all of those ingredients without hesitation. But when we're talking about things like pear halves or peach halves in sugary syrup, that's not healthy, surely, as an alternative to a fresh orange or a fresh banana.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. So there's a sugar content there, which is way higher. But if you look on the tins, you get quite often they'll either come in a syrup, which is a high sugar content, or they'll come in their own juices.
Okay.
And so if you're conscious about your sugar intake, look for tinned, especially the fruits that come in their own juices. For me as a chef, I always lean towards flavour. So if I'm buying any tinned sort of fish or anything like that, I always go for olive oil. But again, if you were looking at lowering that calorie count in there, look for stuff in a brine instead. Yeah. And that's a lot less calories in there.
And the cost difference is just unbelievable.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, fresh fruit and veg, that's where people often complain the expenses, isn't it? And you go to any posh neighbourhood and they've got these absolutely unaffordable greengrocers and whole food stores or whatever they might be. But as you've demonstrated this morning, you can do it on the cheap.
Not just with that one example there. You're talking about canned peas against fresh peas. No difference? Or?
There's such a marginal difference in the nutritional value. I mean, frozen peas, for years, everyone's gone frozen peas are cool because we've all been told they're straight picked and everything else. But the nutritional value is so marginal.
Is there a difference in price, though?
Price is massively cheaper by the tin. The tin's recyclable as well, which is great. But also, I think that one of the things that people not forget, but they miss, is the food waste factor of this. So you buy those beautiful fresh fruits that you were saying that cost a fortune. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but we lose them. We find that bit of fruit in the back of the salad bowl, it's gone mouldy, we throw it away. And every time, especially now with the cost of living crisis, every time a bit of food goes in the bin, that's hard-earned cash that you're throwing away.
And you're a fan of tinned tunas against fresh tuna, tinned tomatoes against fresh, canned pasta.
Oh, interesting. What, like a gnocchi or something, or a...
So especially the long life type gnocchi stuff like that is brilliant because it's ready to go. It cooks in minutes. And I don't know who has spare time in life to make gnocchi.
I've only once tried, and it was inedible. And I've never tried again. It's not easy.
It takes time, right?
It takes time. Yeah.
We're talking about this, and we're talking about cash crisis, how people are saving money, how they're storing up tinned foods in their cupboards. This man says that doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have to be bad for your health. And just some of the recipes that he has, you can catch more of those recipes in Theo's book, Theo Michael's book.
Look at that, beautiful.
Canned. Okay, so there it is, canned, and that is out now. Theo, thank you very much indeed for
coming so much for having me, guys.
And just providing us with some food there, which I noticed. Do you ever notice I sit with women all the time on TV?
Tough game.
And they don't eat because they won't want to set their lipstick, they won't want garlic on their breath this morning, whatever it is. But notice, I enjoyed your food.
I enjoyed it.
I was happy you took one for the team, Eamonn, if I'm honest.
Happily.
I'm going to breathe garlic on me all morning now.
And I can only apologise to you for that.
Theo, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
We'll be back after the break.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Prime Minister apologises to Parliament and vows to get on with the job as a former Tory Chief Whip calls on him to resign.
And wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening from, just after 7 o'clock on this Wednesday, the 20th of April, you're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning.
He doesn't respect the sacrifice of the British public. He is a man without shame.
And after that, the Prime Minister faced calls to resign as he apologised to Parliament, saying that he acknowledged the hurt and anger.
A former Tory Chief Whip, Mark Harper, rounded on the PM, saying he was no longer worthy of his position.
Russian forces have captured the city of Kreminna in the Donbass as they continue their assault on the east of Ukraine. President Zelensky told Western leaders last night that the war would already be over if Ukraine had the weapons it needed.
And Prince Harry has told an NBC chat show that he's making sure the Queen is protected and has the right people around her. This comes ahead of the monarch's 96th birthday tomorrow.
Let us know your views. We've been reflecting those throughout the programme this morning. GBviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GBnews.
So our top story this morning, the Prime Minister faced the House of Commons last night and apologised for breaking the law over Partygate.
As soon as I received the notice, I acknowledged the hurt and the anger. And I said that people had a right to expect better of their Prime Minister. And I repeat that, Mr. Speaker, again in the House now.
Well, in his address, he also vowed to deliver the priorities of the British people, adding that he had spent the day discussing the Ukraine crisis with world leaders like Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron.
In his response, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, told the story of a man called John Robinson.
When his wife died of COVID, John and his family obeyed the Prime Minister's rules. He didn't see her in hospital. He didn't hold her hand as she died. If the Prime Minister had any respect for John and the millions like him who sacrificed everything to follow the rules, he'd resign. But he won't. Because he doesn't respect John.
No. Yeah.
He doesn't respect the sacrifice of the British public. No. He is a man without shame.
OK, and it doesn't end there. The Prime Minister will address the Commons again today. It's Prime Minister's questions. Tomorrow, he will face a vote that will decide if there should be a formal investigation into whether he did actually deliberately mislead Parliament.
Well, our political correspondent Tom Harwood joins us in the studio now. Look, it was a bruising episode, again, for the Prime Minister. Lots of support, though, from his own party, until, it has to be said, Keir Starmer told that story of John Robinson. Tell us what the mood shift was in the chamber.
That's absolutely right. There was a palpable shift in the temperature of the chamber. There was a bullish response from Conservative backbenchers as the Prime Minister was speaking. Indeed, the Prime Minister much more contrite than the people behind him. In many ways, the Conservative Party appeared united and supportive of the Prime Minister, and indeed heckling Keir Starmer when he started his speech. But that heckling soon died out when Keir Starmer started to speak about John Robinson, that constituent in the constituency of Lichfield, who wasn't able to see his wife. Now, talking about that very personal story, talking about the trials that an individual in this country went through, meant that there weren't able to be legitimately those sort of heckles that you'd normally hear. That it meant that the chamber went absolutely stony silent. You could almost hear a pin drop at moments, and that shifted the mood in some ways during and after Sir Keir Starmer's speech. It felt like we were almost back into that time in February when things were really quite difficult for the Prime Minister. Although I suppose as the debate then went on, as Conservative MPs started popping up, talking about how the Prime Minister is respected around the world with regard to his response to the Ukraine crisis, and indeed others pointing to how there is a distinction between misleading the House and deliberately misleading the House, as Peter Bone, the MP for Wellingborough, mentioned in his question. It's true to say one further letter went into Sir Graham Brady, but it didn't feel like that was capturing quite the mood of the backbenches of the Conservative Party. And indeed, later on that evening at 8 p.m, Conservative MPs met up in the committee corridor where they were spoken to by Boris Johnson, where there seemed to be a greater sense of unity amongst Conservative MPs. Certainly some moments where the Prime Minister was on the ropes, but it doesn't quite feel like we're back in that territory.
Well, except it's going to go on forever. I mean, yesterday seemed interminable, apologising. PMQs today, can it move on in any way?
I think that Keir Starmer feels like he has struck a chord, and it would be very, very surprising to see Sir Keir Starmer not bring this up again at Prime Minister's questions. Of course, the Prime Minister is here today, but gone tomorrow in the sense that he is flying off to India this evening. So this is the last opportunity in this sense that MPs will be able to question him on this issue before that crucial vote on Thursday. Because the other thing that happened yesterday is the Speaker granted Sir Keir Starmer permission to move a motion. We'll understand the wording of that motion today, but it will be voted on Thursday, and that has the chance to refer the Prime Minister to the Privileges Committee for an investigation. Now, how many Conservative MPs actually vote with the Labour Party on that motion, that will be interesting to follow.
Yeah, although unlikely, one suspects, given the parliamentary majority that he enjoys. OK, Tom, always good to see you. Thanks very much for that.
Thank you. The time's 7 minutes now past 7 o'clock. Good morning. Thanks for your company. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel. Webster.
Now, on day 56 of the invasion of Ukraine, and Russia is continuing its large-scale assault on the Donbass, capturing the city of Crimea. Ukrainian authorities say the intensity of fire by Russian troops towards Kharkiv, Dnipro and the Donbass region has increased significantly, while the tragic situation at Mariupol remains deadlocked, with the Russian army reportedly blocking attempts at creating humanitarian corridors. Well, President Zelensky made clear that the Ukraine would continue to battle any attempted advance by the Kremlin. For more on this, let's speak now to Taras Pristatsky, who works as a coordinator for the Ukrainian Volunteer Journalists Initiative. A very good morning to you, Taras. Look, with the outbreak of, I suppose, what you could call the second phase of this war, more refugees trying to make their way to safety, but renewed attacks over the weekend on Lviv, which was previously considered to be the safe part of the country. This crisis is deepening, isn't it?
For sure, the official position of our local officials is that these missile strikes is exactly for, I would say, fomenting unrest and making sure that there is no place in Ukraine where we can feel safe. However, I also believe there was a tactical goal for those missile strikes because all of the targets were near the railway infrastructure. And considering the fact that we don't have our sky secured by now, railway is pretty much the only option for us to get military aid from the West. That is why I believe the missile strikes also had a tactical goal to kind of cut us out from the world.
Taras, the big news overnight in terms of this latest phase, of course, is that Crimea, another Ukrainian city, has now been taken by the Russians after it was encircled. The big fear, I suppose, is that it could turn into another sort of Mariupol situation with residents there ultimately suffering horrendously. What's the latest you can tell us on the situation there?
We believe, according to General Staff report, which was, I believe, 3 hours ago, the fighting in Crimea still is happening. However, the Russians have overwhelming forces, and we have a suspicion that we would need to back up for some time to then fight back for Crimea, unfortunately.
And I just want to talk a little bit about the situation in Russia. Obviously, we heard from President Putin yesterday. He was repeating previous threats about using nuclear weapons. We also saw Shoigu, of course, the military man who'd been sort of suspected of having a fallout with the Kremlin, back in front of the cameras, talking about Western countries prolonging this conflict and stopping the liberation that they called this special exercise in the Donbass region. Of course, that's playing to the home audience. What do you interpret by all of that? Do you see a united front coming out of Moscow?
I wouldn't say there is any more united front that was on 21st February. To be honest, we know that there were a lot of changes in Russian Federation Army's command, so it's really difficult to comment on the unity right now. We understand that everything goes not exactly as they planned. However, regarding all of those statements, it is kind of surreal hearing Russian propaganda saying that every country from the West arms Ukraine heavily so they can fight Russia, and then we have to talk with the West and actually convince them to help us. So basically what we have right now is Russians are acting as if we are already way more armed with NATO weapons, while we are still asking for them. So it is a bit surreal. We obviously understand that those statements cannot be taken seriously, and we rather use them as a signal about following attack.
Taras, we spoke to Vladimir Klitschko yesterday on the programme, and he talked about hearing more and more and seeing more and more of the torture and the absolute war crimes that have been committed by the Russians in Ukraine, just hardening that resolve of the Ukrainian people. Would you say that is how morale is at the moment? I know you're based in Lviv. I mean, what's the mood there?
Obviously, it is very different from the mood in occupied territory. So here in Lviv, even missile strikes that happened the day before yesterday, they didn't influence our morale by any stretch of imagination, to be honest. So we are ready to fight. We are still angry, obviously. We are tired from the war here, but we also understand that there is no place for any compromise because we're basically standing for our land and for our existence. However, we have people in, let's say, occupied Kherson, a city that was heroically protesting occupied Russian occupation since the very first weeks of war, and the city that is occupied for almost 2 months right now. We have heard information about tortures. We have heard information about Russian kidnapping people, kidnapping children to manipulate people. We know that all of the local authorities were basically fired. So they went voluntarily, and that right now, instead of them, Russia is putting their own people and spreading propaganda, working at schools, local radio stations, and all of that stuff. So when it comes to the occupied territories, situation remains to be grim, and even though people were showcasing heroic resistance, it cannot happen forever, obviously, when you're cut out.
OK, look, we wish you the best. Taras Prostatsky from the Ukrainian Volunteer of Journalists Initiative. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
7:15 is the time. Headlines are these. The Prime Minister has apologised to MPs for breaking COVID laws during lockdown. He addressed the Commons for the first time since he was fined before holding a private meeting with Conservative politicians. The Conservative MP and former Chief Whip Mark Harper published a letter saying he had lost confidence in Boris Johnson and that Boris Johnson was no longer worthy of being Prime Minister.
An advert that ran on Mother's Day mocking Madeleine McCann's disappearance has been banned for causing offence. An image was posted on the Otley Burger Company's social media with the words, "With burgers this good, you'll leave your kids at home," alongside pictures of Madeleine and her mother. The Advertising Standards Authority says it has caused unjustified, serious and widespread offence.
And there you see Prince Harry, who has been saying on the NBC Breakfast Show that the Queen was in great form when he and his wife Meghan visited her last week. In an interview with NBC, the Duke of Sussex added he wanted to make sure Her Majesty was protected and had the right people around her. OK, so new research this week shows a quarter of workers fear they're not saving enough for their pension, and just 14% think they'll end up comfortable in retirement. You don't have to think about this yet. I would have no idea. How can you prepare for the future? How can you save smarter for the future? Beside me, luckily, we have pensions analyst at Hargreaves Lansdowne, and that's Helen Morrissey to join us in the studio. Helen, this is a subject, very good to see you, but this is and it's nice to talk to you, but pensions, people glaze over, and then it comes closer, and then they get frightened. Now, I honestly could say to you, I have no idea, none whatsoever, what I need or what would keep me in the style to which I'm accustomed, and I would imagine that style is going to fall greatly in the years ahead.
You've encapsulated that perfectly, Eamonn. Basically, a lot of us have a workplace pension. We contribute to it every month, but we just don't engage with it. Retirement seems like a very long way away until all of a sudden it's upon us, and none of us really have a great handle on what we want our retirements to look like and how much we might need to save to get there.
But, you know, it's awful when you think of people who haven't got enough to get by, they haven't got enough to heat or eat or whatever. And then you've got me. If you asked me, if you sat down as my analyst and said, Eamonn, what do you need? I would say, well, I wouldn't like the idea that I couldn't change my car every 3 years. I wouldn't like the idea that I couldn't take one foreign holiday a year. And you think, my God, what am I asking for? What would it take?
This is the thing. I think people have very, very different expectations of what they're going to get from retirement. So as you
They
say,
don't really want their lives to change, do they?
No, they don't at all. And I think, you know, the very traditional view of retirement is that it's one long holiday,
Yes.
and that, you know, you're going to have a comfortable time,
Yeah.
you're going to be going away on holiday, and people hold on to that and they don't think it's going to change, whereas the way that we're retiring is changing a lot. We're working for longer. You might be working 2-3 days a week, for instance, well into your 60s or maybe even 70s. And that kind of dream of being on a 30-year holiday isn't
Yes.
the norm anymore.
But a lot of that, you know, people could say, well, if I don't work, I'll seize up or I'll decline or whatever. But that's not really true. What's true is, financially, people are frightened. They think, look, OK, I'll have the pension lark going on, whatever it is, but I still need to be bringing in stuff to pay for going to the cinema and having a meal out once a week or whatever it happens to be. So we can do all this talking and we can talk about expectations, whatever, but these figures are now frightening, that there is a big wake-up call. A quarter of workers fear they're not saving enough in that pension. You can tell me if that's true or not. And 14% think they'll end up comfortable in retirement. Just 14%.
Exactly. So I think what we've got at the moment, we've got auto-enrolment. So for the last 10 years, if you're aged over 22 and you earn more than 10 grand a year, you're auto-enrolled into a pension. So you contribute and your employer contributes. Now that's currently set at around 8%. Now that's a really great start, but it's nowhere near enough for you to get a comfortable retirement. So what we need to do is to engage people to boost those contributions so they are actually putting more away to give them a more comfortable retirement in years to come.
Do you see, when you say comfortable retirement, is there an algorithm or a formula that guys like you use and you say, well, look, if your salary was 25 grand a year, if your salary was 50 grand a year, if your salary was 100 grand a year, is there a formula that you work out and say, guys, you want to keep ticking along, you want to feel comfortable, this is what you've got to do?
So I think, as you say, retirement means different things to different people. But what we tend to say is that your outgoings do go down quite a lot when you retire.
Do they?
Because you're not
travelling, you're not commuting, yes.
You're not commuting.
You're not buying lunch out every day.
Lunch, exactly. Then you also have the state pension kicking in, and if you get the full state pension, that's 9.5 grand a year, which is a really good start and foundation for your retirement. So what we tend to think about is that if you can generate around maybe 2/3 of your income, including that state pension, then that should give you a decent retirement.
So if you're able to match what was 2/3 off your final salary, and that included that state pension, then I feel really bad. And then I think, what about people who only have that state pension, who only have that 9.5 grand? You look at it and you think, how on earth do they do it?
I mean, they're having a really, really difficult time. There's still too many people that are largely or wholly reliant on the state pension. What I would say to those people on those low incomes is check to see if you qualify for pension credits, which is a really, really, really valuable benefit for low-income pensioners. It tops you up to just over £180 a week if you're a single pensioner. But it's a really good, what I call a gateway benefit as well, in that it'll give you help with things like NHS costs, help with bills. It can really, really boost the income of the poorest pensioners, and not enough people are
aware of it or availing of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Look, final words, Helen. It's been lovely talking to you, and you explained it all very well. Is there a thought that you would leave? I mean, there'd be 25-year-olds watching this and think, oh, what's this got to do with me? Is it ever too early or ever too late to contribute towards your pension?
It's never too early and it's never too late. You can always make a difference by contributing to a pension.
OK. Thank you, Helen. Thank you very much indeed. Helen is a pensions analyst, a very good one, at Hargreaves Lansdown in London. Thanks for your company.
Coming up, we're going to have all the top sports stories from the back pages.
We don't want to talk sport. We don't want to talk sport today.
Yeah, I know.
We don't.
We were missing
Let's
Ronaldo.
drop that next bit.
The royal we.
Let's drop that.
We will be doing sport, and before that even is the weather.
Hello, good morning. I'm Stephen Keats with your latest Met Office forecast. The next few days offer a warmer day today, But then it will turn cloudy towards the end of this week as we pick up this brisk easterly wind and temperatures for some of us coming down a bit. But first thing this morning, though, we've got a fair amount of sunshine out there, particularly for parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland once the fog lifts. Elsewhere, of course, England and Wales, variable amounts of clouds. It won't be sunny everywhere, but most places will see some sunshine at times through the day. Perhaps a cloud across parts of Wales and southwest England, thick enough in the afternoon for a few showers, but far less showers than what we saw through the course of yesterday. And for many of us, it will be a warmer day away from East Coast with that breeze coming in off the sea. Highs in the south this afternoon, probably 18, 19, perhaps 20 degrees. Now, any showers we do have during this evening will soon fade away. 1 or 2 for northwest Scotland for a time as well. And then into Thursday morning, I think a lot of dry, fine weather around. Again, some clear spells, but I think areas of cloud will occasionally ingress from the North Sea across parts of eastern England, parts of the coast of eastern Scotland and northeast England too. And like with recent nights, it'll be chilly in the countryside with perhaps a touch of frost in places, but most towns and cities holding up between 4 and 8 Celsius. Then for tomorrow, then it's a mostly dry picture across the country. We'll start to pick up quite a brisk and gusty easterly wind, and this will bring in areas of cloud off the North Sea from time to time. Not cloudy everywhere, but I think more cloud for many places what we'll see through the course of today. And again, the coasts of eastern Scotland and northeast England could be quite grey and misty for much of the day. Now, temperatures down a notch on Thursday compared to what we'll see this afternoon, but still highs of 17 or 18 Celsius. Now, for the end of the week, we've got low pressure diving down towards the Bay of Biscay, being some very unsettled weather here. High pressure to the north of the UK, and the net effect of this is this brisk easterly flow. You can see the little bumps in the isobars here, always a sign that to the west of high ground, could see some quite gusty conditions. This will feed in areas of cloud, but some sunny spells for Thursday. More cloud, though, generally for Friday and Saturday. A few showers by this stage as well. And whilst west is generally best for temperatures, generally speaking, it's a bit cooler.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Still to come on our little breakfast show for you this morning, we're going to be discussing Prince Harry. So he appeared on another breakfast show, not ours, I don't know why, but it was in NBC in America.
Yes, he's American now, Eamonn, and he only
he said that.
Yeah, he only wants to talk to American show hosts, and it hasn't actually aired in the States yet because they haven't quite woken up. It's a bit behind us, but it's going out today. And he's very magnanimously talked about protecting the Queen, but we're asking this morning, who exactly is he protecting her from?
Well, he wants
seems to be the one that's been causing a lot of the headaches.
Yeah. And he wants to make sure she's got the right people around her, which obviously doesn't involve him because he's scarpered, hasn't he? But anyway. New report as well, medically, talking about the dangers of waiting for diagnosis. We all know about this, whatever your ailment is, but this morning particularly talking about diabetes, and we'll be speaking to a woman who managed to lose weight.
Not just a little bit, 10 stone.
I mean, phenomenal, phenomenal.
Halved her weight.
So anyway, she's going to be telling you if you're in that situation, because diabetes is so directly linked to weight issues as well. 8:20 on that one. If you've got a tale to tell, get in touch with us at GB News. But right now, the sport, the bit that I didn't really want to talk about today. But listen, Paul Coit is here with us now. Paul, the truth is we're going to kick off that Premier League match last night. Liverpool sit top of the league, maybe temporarily, until City play tonight. Not one single pundit or expert got it wrong last night. They all feared for Manchester United. They feared for a collapse against Liverpool, and it was, as a United supporter, it was humiliating to watch.
It actually could have been worse. You know, this is why I'm going to try and say that. I think it's unfortunate that Isabel's decided to wear the Liverpool kit today. I don't know whether you noticed that.
No, this is us in support of United.
Is that what? Right. Okay,
deliberately chose a red tie today.
Fine.
But anyway.
Well, look, it was bad. And the thing is, I'll try and look at the bright side for you as much as I possibly can, because as bad as Manchester United were, Liverpool are an unbelievable side. And it's got to be extremely painful for Manchester United fans to be able to see this going on.
But the way they worked the goals as well, I mean, world class in some instances.
It was world class. And it was, you know, to you, I hate to use cliches, but it was the whole men against boys situation. Manchester United looked rudderless. You've got Paul Pogba gets injured after 10 minutes, and I don't think he was too disappointed to get off the pitch and thinking, well, I'll walk away. It's for people to start.
I don't think a lot of fans, United fans, were too worried either. I just think, you know, bye Paul, close the door behind you, really, because that might be his last appearance, depending how long it takes for the knee injury to repair.
Well, I think a lot of that depends on him and how long he thinks that knee injury is going to take to repair. I'd be surprised if you see him in Manchester United shirt again. It was just rudderless, and we've got the situation with the manager, Ralph Rangnick, who has come in as interim. Now, does that work? It's like the relief teacher at school. The relief teacher comes in, and you know what it's like with kids, and I'm sure that
take advantage.
That's it, and thinking, OK, well, let's see how far we can push this guy. Maybe we can get away with this, and on a grand scale, to me, it looks like Manchester United, one of the great football clubs of the world, its players are doing that because they're thinking, well, this guy's not going to be around too long. We don't have to really bother. It was a worry.
They were playing players, you're right, didn't seem to be like a team. It didn't seem to be joined up. But as you say...
Not just because of Ronaldo.
No, the thing is, it's been before that as well. It has been before that as well. He's had problems with other players in this situation. There are like Eamonn says, it's individuals. It's a team game, and if you don't all work together, it ain't.
So City play tonight. Who's City playing tonight?
City playing Brighton
at the Etihad, isn't it?
Correct.
So you could assume they'll take the points tonight.
If you look at Brighton's last two games, they played Arsenal away and they won. They played Spurs at the weekend and they won. These are two teams going for the top four. Manchester City is, are Manchester City, so you would expect that. But Brighton have been very good away from home. And I'm flip-flopping between Liverpool and Manchester City to win the title. So if Man City get a point, then they're back in there again because there's a game in hand. I just can't make my mind up of who's going to actually win it. I just think Liverpool just look unbeatable at the moment, but they're fighting on four fronts.
Talking about back in there again, Fulham, they've guaranteed promotion. They are up there, back in the Premier League again, and they are up and they're down and they're up and they're down.
Are you ever going to see Fulham play Norwich? This is what I wonder, because it's like it's like playing snakes and ladders between Norwich and Fulham. Yeah. So Fulham again, great in the Championship, straight up. You've got Alexander Mitrovic, he's got 40 goals.
Yeah.
But then when he gets to the Premier League, it seems a different kettle of fish. Are they going to manage to stay? There's a lot of Fulham fans I've spoken to, and they're really excited about it, but a lot of them are going, oh, well, we'll make the most of it because we may well go down next year. But let's hope they stick around.
And they have ground renovations going on.
They do. Whole new stand, which is being built. Again, are they going to be that flip-flopping team that just go up and go down? But anyway, for the meantime, we should celebrate because they are up.
To them. Congratulations to them.
Absolutely.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. I'd love to say you've eased my pain, but no.
It's just not possible.
It's not possible. Bye-bye.
See
you soon, Paul. Stay with us. Up next, we've got David Mellor and Claire Muldoon taking us through the papers. See you in a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Having a few dramas. The floor manager just nearly took Eamonn out there. Sorry to publicly shame you there. He's helping us out. Right, let's go through the papers. You're right.
No, I'm not really, but anyway.
We've got the former Tory Minister David Mellor joining us and the broadcaster Claire Muldoon, but we're going to take a look at the headlines first of all at 7:34. The former Prime Minister the former Prime Minister Theresa May has questioned the legality of government plans to send migrants to Rwanda. She's warned the policy could lead to an increase in trafficking of women and children. The Home Secretary has defended the plans, saying they are legal and will tackle smuggling gangs who exploit loopholes in our existing laws.
Julian Assange could be extradited to America sooner than anticipated, as Westminster Magistrates Court is formally expected to issue that order today. It will then be down to the Home Secretary to approve, but the WikiLeaks founder lawyers could still appeal in the High Court.
Manchester United player Cristiano Ronaldo was absent from last night's clash with Liverpool following the announcement of the death of one of his newborn twins. A fan led a minute's applause in the 7th minute of the game in support of Ronaldo and his family.
We're going to go through with their views on the papers now. We've got broadcaster Claire Muldoon and former Conservative MP Mr David Mellor. David, just want to know your opinion. Julian Assange popping up in the news again, and you sort of go, I thought he was gone, I thought he was history, I thought he got married, but he was incarcerated in the Ecuadorian embassy, wherever he was. So what is the situation with Julian Assange? What's your view on whether he should be extradited or not?
Well, I don't think he should. I think that WikiLeaks was an important part of allowing the public to be told what was going on.
Even if it put lives at risk?
Well, they'll always say it puts lives at risk, but the truth matters. And you never get your truth out of the Americans, are you, unless somebody does something like that. And I think he's now been in prison for a couple of years. I think if he does get extradited to America, they'll lock him up for the rest of his life. I don't think that's right. I think that there have to be brave people who are willing to put information out there, because we have a right to know what these blanks are doing in our name and what they might be doing to us without us knowing about it. So I'm rather sympathetic to Julian Assange.
OK, interesting. Your views on that? Are you sympathetic? At GB News.
Claire, should we talk about the Partygate scandal? On the front of a lot of the papers this morning, as you'd expect, a man without shame was the line that Sir Keir Starmer levelled at the Prime Minister. We're probably more of the same at PMQs today.
Well, yeah, it's going to be really interesting for Boris Johnson, and we know he has to answer far more questions and face a lot more criticism than he did yesterday. A man without shame, PM savaged over parties, leads with The Guardian. It's Keir Starmer's attack on the Prime Minister, and it's a Labour motion that will be voted tomorrow by Boris Johnson's peers. And the motion is... It will vote tomorrow in Labour motion that would trigger an investigation by the House of Commons Privileges Committee into whether Johnson misled Parliament over a string of lockdown-busting parties in Downing Street. I am so over this. I just can't believe we're... well, the reason we are discussing it is because it is in the papers. You don't need to be pro-Prime Minister or against the Prime Minister to report on this. And I wish people would understand that when we are bringing this news to our audiences. We have to talk about this because it is in the papers. I don't think we can talk about this and not talk about the fact that the First Minister of Scotland broke her own laws by not wearing a face mask. To most SNP supporters, that's trivialisation. Could we not say the same about what happened here in the terms of what Boris Johnson has been accused of? I'm neither saying it's right nor wrong. All I'm saying is if it's rules for one, it's rules for them all. And Boris didn't play by the rules, but I would actually question who actually did. I did.
Oh, come on, I did. You know, there's lots of people, and John Robertson's family did as well. I don't really care who didn't play. The people who did play by the rules, and Keir Starmer told that story about John Robertson, surely that had to tug at heartstrings with that, and it's absolutely true.
Of course it would tug at heartstrings. Of course it was despicable that people couldn't hold the hands of their loved ones at their last...
So that's all we've got to worry about then.
Well, is it really, Eamonn?
Well, yeah. They applied the rules. He made the rules. He didn't apply them. You know, so, I mean, I don't know what the big issue is.
Neither did the people.
If it was VAR, David Miller, he was offside.
Of course.
Right.
And repeatedly offside. You know, there are some players who are always offside. Boris is always offside.
He was very good yesterday at saying sorry. He was programmed before I answer anything. I'm going to say I'm really terribly sorry.
Exactly.
I'm going to say sorry.
Eamonn, Keir Starmer, there was pictures of Keir Starmer with beer bottles having a party at the same time.
If I could just say that Philip Johnson, the highly experienced columnist in the Telegraph, gets it absolutely right. He said if people don't think the Prime Minister feels real remorse, then his repeated apologies will fall flat. I know a lot of people are saying there's a war in Ukraine. You know, the country faces an economic mess. Why are we still going on about what happened 2 years ago? The reason we're talking about what happened 2 years ago is because of the sense that we are being led by a man who has no respect for the truth and thinks rules don't apply to him. Philip Johnson pulls out an extract from one of Boris's school reports. Now, I wouldn't want any of my school reports gone through, but it doesn't stop me having a laugh at somebody else's. His classics master at Eton reported to his father, Boris sometimes seems affronted when criticised for what amounts to a gross failure of responsibility. I think he honestly believes, says the schoolmaster, but you know, this could have been said last week, I think he honestly believes that it is churlish of us not to regard him as an exception, one who should be free of the network of obligations that bind everyone else.
Prophetic.
In a nutshell.
Well, no,
there
it doesn't change his spots, but my point is there are more untruths that Boris Johnson has lived his life by than this, and he's not the only politician to have
what part of this do you not understand? He made the rules. He didn't apply his rules. Keir Starmer didn't make the rules. Keir Starmer had to abide by the rules.
It was across party Houses of Parliament.
Look, come here. He's the boss man. He's the boss man. He made them. I don't vote for any of them. I don't care, right? So call me Boris Basham. I'm not. It was VAR. He was offside. He was offside. He was caught. End off. He can say sorry.
They should all be caught then.
But I think
he's the top of the tree. He is.
See, the problem is a lot of people went through agony during this period. They had to be behind masks, looking through a window.
Well, the Scottish people still have to wear masks until Monday.
Hang on a minute now. When their close relatives were dying. And we know that Boris was not really honouring the rules that he insisted on, though he didn't have to insist on those rules. Those rules have turned out to be a huge waste of time.
I'm really interested to know what your view is of where this all leaves the ministerial code, because the ministerial code says no ministers can break the law. The CPS thought the threshold was reached. The police convicted him. He had to pay a fine. He's accepted that the police were completely right, and that's why he paid the fine. So he broke the law.
Except,
Is the
Isabel.
ministerial code therefore meaningless?
Isabel. No, Isabel, except if you pay your fine on time. It is without responsibility. It is without any sort of prejudice. So you're not deemed to have broken the law. I mean, the law, they say, is an ass. But apparently if you pay the fine...
But do you think that's the case?
You
Do you
haven't
think the
broken the law.
ministerial code is meaningless?
I think the ministerial code is increasingly meaningless. But you see, this is going to be Groundhog Day. One of my favourite films, Groundhog Day. It's now been transferred into politics because we're going to wake up on a lot of mornings in the next couple of months and Boris has been fined. Because don't forget, there's 12 of these parties and they've only got to number 2.
Yeah. So why hasn't the committee then, the 1922 committee, received any letters from the MPs wanting Boris Johnson
Well,
off
they got
the
one
case?
Yesterday. Mark Harper came out, former chief whip.
They need
But you're right,
49.
lots have been released. Yeah, they haven't reached the threshold.
But you see, what they're trying to do, and I understand this because, you know, Boris hasn't got to be Prime Minister by being completely hopeless. And on his day, he can be very good. And I think when you consider we're going to come to this, I know, the craven way that the German government has behaved, the whole German political system has behaved, he can walk through Kiev, Boris Johnson, and people cheer him. That's good for Britain, and it's brave, and it needs to be done because of what they're suffering. But sadly, that same Boris is a serial liar. You know, I know I've said it before. It's boring, but I'll say it just once more. He reminds me of Harold Wilson, who he was telling me, he was a Labour leader who had every quality except he couldn't tell the truth. And the joke always was, how can you tell when Harold Wilson is lying? And the answer is his lips move. And this is where we are with Boris, sadly.
Guys, I'd like you to stay with us now as we talk to royal commentator Robert Jobson now about this, because Prince Harry has given another interview in America. It'll be going out today. It's on NBC's Today Show.
Yeah, he's been speaking about visiting his grandmother, the Queen, in Windsor Castle last week, a surprise visit, timed perfectly whilst his brother was out of the country. And he's also said something quite interesting.
Yes, he has, which Robert's going to tell us about. And Robert, we've got our newspaper reviewers, Claire and David, standing by to give their views as well. Tell us how interesting it was that he said.
Well, he's talking about how he's protecting his grandmother and that he wants to make sure that she's protected. From who? I don't know. I don't know that Harry proposes to do this either. He's away in America. So it was a sort of a dig, I think, at not only the courtiers, but perhaps Scotland Yard, but his own family, I think, because they've been doing, you know, actions speak louder than words. And his family, particularly the Prince of Wales, has stepped up to the plate. He's filling in for the Queen wherever possible now that she's nearly 96 and has trouble with mobility. And they're already working very hard. And for him to come in and make these comments, I think was somewhat churlish. And it just seems to me that he's doing this to create headlines.
OK, I'm going to let our viewers
America.
off the leash here and see what they have to say about this. Yeah. So he believes, Claire, the Queen should be surrounded by the right sort of people.
Well, that's what Prince Harry is saying. And Richard, good morning. I just don't know where this is coming from. Do you think that the Queen should allow or will allow Prince Harry to be on the Jubilee balcony?
Look, the issue here is we must always remember that the royal family, although who they are, is increasingly like a soap opera the way it's developed. They are a family, and families have schisms and splits, and there's always love there, even when there's problems. But so therefore, it's a difficult call. She will want there to be unity, and to have unity, you'd have them on the balcony. But I'm sure there'll be a few on that balcony, particularly with this book coming up, that won't particularly want them on the balcony.
Yeah.
Let's hear from David.
Well, I mean, I think... Well, I think I said to you, I woke up this morning, having spent 5 hours in an opera house, and thinking I've got to spend a couple of hours with you, Eamonn. I'm thinking, what is there about life that's fun? And then I read this, and I'm crack up. This is a great comedian we are watching here.
But you see, David's right. David's point is it's comedic. The best comedians couldn't come up with a line like this, Robert. But in the famous woke world, there's very little humour, isn't there? And they would be perhaps a bit blind to this in the woke world.
Well, I agree with David wholeheartedly, but the trouble is, I think that Harry believes all this nonsense. He's probably spent far too long on the west coast of America. I mean, is he seriously thinking that he's the man to save the day after he's created so many headaches for the Queen? There's too many to count. I noticed he was talking a lot about his meeting with the Queen and not his meeting with his father, which I'm sure would have been a far more tense affair. But, he's nearly 40 now, Harry. I think being the court jester now is wearing a little thin. And I think really he should be showing a bit more responsibility. Maybe it's an Etonian thing, I don't know.
Dare I say, Robert, that he might have had a point in terms of who's advising Her Majesty. I mean, she did, of course, walk up the aisle with Prince Andrew, and there does seem to be, certainly in some quarters, more hatred towards Prince Harry, even though it's Prince Andrew who's actually settled out of court for, underage sex. That you can't really compare the two.
Settled out of court, unproven, as we've got Eamonn and QC and David there, and not the case was settled out of court. But the point of it is, I hear what you say, but Her Majesty's been playing the Game of Thrones a little longer than Prince Harry, and with the greatest respect to, I think she's got more going on upstairs than he, and she can make judgments which are based upon years of experience. I think that him to start stepping in like a boy soldier, I think Scotland Yard have got this one completely under control in terms of protection for Her Majesty's physical side. In terms of her supporting, I think Prince William and Catherine and the Cambridges, and particularly the Prince of Wales and Camilla, have been doing a far better job than blurting about it on American television.
As always, Robert is right on the money. William has stepped up to the plate. There were those who said William wasn't, very addicted to hard work and all that, but William has become addicted to hard work. And Kate Middleton has done a wonderful job. Let's be quite clear about that.
Those three
kids.
She is absolutely
Charles is doing his best. Although, like a lot of us of a certain age, we drag behind us all the sort of litter and detritus of our previous lives, and Charles is going to have trouble with that. But what I find so awful about Harry, I don't actually believe in his sincerity. He sold his soul to the devil. He's becoming like a sort of member of the Kardashians, having to do all this stuff for Netflix. He's not got as nice bottom as most of the Kardashians, but he's going to, I'm sure, do his best. And the reality of it is that he has got to show he's relevant. So he had to get in to see Granny, and he's got to now give a self-serving set of remarks about it.
Let's give the final word to Robert there about the Netflix deal and the importance of still rubbing up against the royals, being seen with them, being photographed, being filmed with them. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, well, it's big bucks, isn't it? That's the bottom line. And ultimately, if they're off the screen, if they're off the screen and they're not relevant, then they're not going to get the money that they need. That's why he's writing this book. That's why he wants to be on the balcony, trooping the colour. But as I'm sure that he would argue that he's got quite a nice bottom.
Robert Jobson, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, appreciate that. And David and Claire will be back in 40 minutes' time. So there we go. The time is 10 minutes to 8.
It is, and today is the 20th day of the 4th month, commonly in America known as 420 amongst cannabis enthusiasts, and it has now become a worldwide representation of cannabis culture.
Could I just ask, Isabel and I were talking earlier, and she takes half a gummy bear with
It's not a gummy bear, it's a gummy.
Oh, a gummy, right.
Yeah, that's a form of medicine in a
form of medicine.
Gum.
So she takes
all sorts.
She takes half a gum, which she says knocks her out. Right, I take half a bottle of cannabis oil. I did last night. Took quite a lot. The stuff you buy in pharmacy.
I've never ever tried it. And I think I don't necessarily agree with it, actually, to be honest with you.
Well, look, if you have chronic pain, you'll agree with it.
Yeah.
If you can't sleep, you'll agree with it.
It's got
if
all
you've got
the bad stuff
anxiety,
taken
you'll
out.
agree. It's got all the bad stuff taken out.
There's no hallucinogenic.
No, I get
just
that.
Makes you a bit drowsy.
I get that, but when you've got shop fronts on the high street selling it, do kids then not think cannabis is
selling
safe?
aspirin and selling ibuprofen and paracetamol and all these other tramadols.
But they're legit. You can buy them without.
Well, except what became legit was stuff that was little better than prescribed drugs given a different name.
Have you not watched Dope Sick?
OK, but what we're going to watch now is our man Bradley Harris, because he's at a very interesting place, having cannabis for breakfast, which may enhance his reports a bit. Here we go. Bradley.
Morning, both. Yeah, I'm at West Lakes Hemp in Cumbria CBD Cafe, which has really surprised me, actually, at the types of products you can have CBD in. Things like soap, hand cream, coffee even. We'll get into that in a moment. But I'm sitting next to Nick Hewitt, who's the executive director of the company. Nick, first of all, there is a difference between cannabis and CBD. We're talking about it because of 420 Day, a celebration of cannabis. Just in brief, tell me the difference.
So CBD and THC are both compounds found in the cannabis plant. I mean, there's over 119 different compounds. THC is the one that's known most because it's what you would associate with getting stoned. CBD is just another compound like THC that's present in the cannabis plant, but it's non-psychoactive.
That's a very brief but good way of explaining it. I should say, you know, cannabis, if you are found in possession of it, you can be sentenced for up to 5 years in prison. It is a serious offence. It's still illegal to possess cannabis now, but CBD is different. You've explained that. It is legal. You can use it. Just talk to me about some of the products then, Nick, because I'm holding up what looks like a normal bar of soap.
It is CBD soap, so it's lavender and lemongrass.
It smells lovely.
It is. I love it, and it's you know, a lot of people use it. Again, it's soap at the end of the day. You wash with it, but you know, it's got a lot of properties in there that'll help with skin, cosmetically. You can use it washing your face. You know, it's just integrating it into your routine in a different way.
Right, Nick, doggy drops.
Doggy drops.
Talk
yes.
to me.
So, just like us, dogs have got their own endocannabinoid system. Hemp oil certainly helps dogs. It gives them a shinier coat, can improve joint pain. The thing is that with CBD, it actually works a lot faster on dogs.
Right, okay. And also coffee as well. Perfect for breakfast. This is a CBD coffee. Smells like coffee, tastes like coffee. It's coffee, isn't it?
It's coffee, it is. So it's roasted with CBD. And again, so the amount of CBD that you get in 1 cup is the equivalent of taking one of our 300 milligram capsules. So if you're on that kind of low dose, a coffee a day, they'll see you on your way.
It's interesting that you've got the CBD cafe here in Cumbria. It's it is the first when you opened, the first CBD cafe when you opened it in August last year. When customers come in for the first time, they see it's a CBD cafe. It's pretty obvious with the branding as well. What's the reaction from customers when they first walk in?
Really positive, really positive. I think now in this day and age and the way that the cannabis industry is going, it's not as taboo as it used to be. There's still a lot of stigma and discrimination around it. You know, people still need to be educated. There's a lot to learn about the plant. But essentially, we've had a really good reception in Cumbria. I mean, you know, my sort of dream would be is if we had farmers in Cumbria producing hemp, that we could get the extractions from it and use here and have it as a Cumbrian local business through and through.
Great. Well, Nick, good to chat to you again. Nice to see some of the products here as well. So, Eamonn and Isabel, if you fancy a coffee or a CBD soap, you know where to come.
Thanks, Bradley. Thank you.
Nice.
I think it's a way of re-identifying or re-examining the word cannabis, you know, and if you see it as a medical term, you wouldn't, if someone said, do you have some aspirin or have some, you know, Nurofen or
Well,
whatever
it's been very heavily marketed in a different name, hasn't it? CBD, I don't think of myself as taking cannabis oil, do you? Do you think of yourself as taking
No, I just see something that can make me relaxed or make me sleep, which works quite well, and if you have chronic pain or something, these are different ways of consuming these things.
Yes, indeed, and...
do you know what they say? They say that it is impossible to sneeze on air during television broadcasts because you're so nervous your body doesn't allow you to do it. I'm obviously
the
not
same
nervous
with driving.
enough.
I remember when I was a learner driver, my mum was in the seat next to me and I go, Mum, I'm going to sneeze. I was heading to a roundabout and I go, what do I do? She goes, I don't know.
Sneeze.
I went straight into the roundabout with my eyes closed. I would live to tell the tale. But anyway, I proved that you can also drive and sneeze at the same time. On that note, we're going to take a break. Hopefully no more sneezing. We'll see you at the top of the hour.
Hello, good morning. I'm Stephen Keats with your latest Met Office forecast. The next few days offer a warmer day today, but then it will turn cloudy towards the end of this week as we pick up this brisk easterly wind and temperatures for some of us coming down a bit. But first thing this morning, though, we've got a fair amount of sunshine out there, particularly for parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland once the fog lifts. Elsewhere, across England and Wales, variable amounts of clouds. It won't be sunny everywhere, but most places will see some sunshine at times through the day. Perhaps a cloud across parts of Wales and southwest England, thick enough in the afternoon for a few showers, but far less showers than what we saw through through the course of yesterday. And for many of us, it will be a warmer day away from East Coast with that breeze coming in off the sea. Highs in the south this afternoon, probably 18, 19, perhaps 20 degrees. Now, any showers we do have during this evening will soon fade away. 1 or 2 for northwest Scotland for a time as well. And then into Thursday morning, I think a lot of dry, fine weather around. Again, some clear spells, but I think areas of cloud will occasionally ingress from the North Sea across parts of eastern England, parts of the coast of eastern Scotland and northeast England too. And like with recent nights, it'll be chilly in the countryside with perhaps a touch of frost in places, but most towns and cities holding up between 4 and 8 Celsius. Then for tomorrow, then, it's a mostly dry picture across the country. We'll start to pick up quite a brisk and gusty easterly wind, and this will bring in areas of cloud off the North Sea from time to time. Not cloudy everywhere, but I think more cloud for many places what we'll see through the course of today. And again, the coasts of eastern Scotland and northeast England could be quite grey and misty for much of the day. Now, temperatures down a notch on Thursday compared to what we'll see this afternoon, but still highs of 17 or 18 Celsius. Now, for the end of the week, we've got low pressure diving down towards the Bay of Biscay, being some very unsettled weather here. High pressure to the north of the UK, and the net effect of this is a brisk easterly flow. You can see the little bumps in the isobars here, always a sign that to the west of high ground, could see some quite gusty conditions. This will feed in areas of cloud, but some sunny spells for Thursday. More cloud, though, generally for Friday and Saturday. A few showers by this stage as well. And whilst west is generally best for temperatures, generally speaking, it's a bit cooler.
Tonight on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Prime Minister apologises to Parliament and vows to get on with the job as a former Tory Chief Whip calls on him to resign.
Good morning, it's 8:01 on Wednesday, the 20th of April. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Leading the news this morning, the Prime...
He doesn't respect the sacrifice of the British public. He is a man without shame.
The Prime Minister faced calls to resign last night as he apologised to Parliament, saying that he acknowledged the hurt and anger of former Tory Chief Whip Mark Harper, rounded on him, saying he was no longer worthy of his position.
Russian forces have captured the city of Crimea in the Donbass as they continue their assault in the east of Ukraine. President Zelensky told Western leaders last night that the war would already be over if Ukraine had the weapons that it needed.
Prince Harry has told the NBC Morning Show that he is making sure the Queen is protected and has the right people around her. It comes ahead of the monarch's 96th birthday, which is tomorrow.
Let us know your thoughts on that and on the rest of the morning's news by emailing us gbnews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews.
Top story this morning, the Prime Minister faced the House of Commons yesterday and apologised for breaking the law over Partygate.
As soon as I received the notice, I acknowledged the hurt and the anger. And I said that people had a right to expect better of their Prime Minister. And I repeat that, Mr. Speaker, again in the House now.
Well, in his address, he also vowed to deliver the priorities of the British people, adding that he'd spent the day discussing the Ukraine crisis with world leaders, including Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron.
In his response, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, told the story of a man called John Robinson.
When his wife died of COVID, John and his family obeyed the Prime Minister's rules. He didn't see her in hospital. He didn't hold her hand as she died. If the Prime Minister had any respect for John and the millions like him who sacrificed everything to follow the rules, he'd resign. But he won't, because he doesn't respect John. He doesn't respect the sacrifice of the British public. He is a man without shame.
Well, the Prime Minister will address the Commons again today at PMQs, and tomorrow he'll face a vote that will decide if there should be a formal investigation into whether he misled Parliament.
Co-founder of JL Partner Polls, James Johnson, who formerly ran polling for Number 10, and our political correspondent Tom Harwood join us in the studio now.
Tom, we were just hearing from Sir Keir Starmer in the Commons yesterday with that very powerful story of John Robinson. As you said a little bit earlier in the programme, really changed the tone and the mood in the chamber. But you've got an interesting update on that.
That's right. It's understandable as to why the Prime Minister can't say anything other than sorry, how bad it would look to try and explain the situation in which he found himself. However, by the 19th of June 2020, it was actually legal in this country to see dying relatives or indeed dying friends in homes, in hospitals, in hospices and in care homes. The regulations had changed a week earlier, and this was set out in terms of the stages of lockdown easing that the country had seen over the previous weeks and months. By this stage, it was legal to have indoor retail, to move homes, to go to showrooms, indeed to prepare a house that you might want to move into as well. There were all sorts of changes to the rules, including seeing up to 6 people outdoors as well. So these comparisons from the height of lockdown compared to various other stages sometimes aren't particularly comparable directly. However, of course, if the Prime Minister were to say any of that, it would look like he was scuttling away. It would look awful in response to that tragedy. So I think it's important to understand the context surrounding the time, even though it's understandable as to why the Prime Minister doesn't feel like he could say that in the chamber.
Yeah, and look, there may be a lot of sympathy for that argument on this occasion. The worry is that this story just doesn't go away. It continues to undermine his authority, and eventually one of the 6 parties will not be as forgivable, perhaps. Is that a risk for the Prime Minister, do you think?
That's certainly a risk, although when we're talking about these parties, and very often when the opposition brings up a particular gathering or another, it almost seems like they all merge together. You hear the word party and you don't sort of see the specific context in which it is, that it's people who were in a building that houses over 300 people who were there for work purposes. Now, whether they do something that might be considered more social or more work at one particular point in the day, it's a matter to some extent for interpretation. And clearly the Met Police are going through these events one by one, deciding in some very grey areas in terms of what passes from work to being a party. But also, of course, these all took place under varying different stages of whether it's the tiering system, whether it's lockdown easing, whether it's rule of 6, whatever it is. It was a very complicated 2 years.
beside me now, James Johnson, pollster.
Relation.
No relation that we know of. So basically, Downing Street will be doing their polls. You've been in there working there before, you know how that works. Will they be getting told the same things you're getting told about the Prime Minister from the public?
Yeah, I expect they certainly will.
Which is?
Which is a very hostile view indeed. We did a poll over the weekend that showed that 72% of people held a negative opinion of the Prime Minister, and the most commonly used word when they describe the Prime Minister is liar. Now, back when Boris Johnson first became Prime Minister, Labour voters, die-hard opponents of the Prime Minister, might use that word. But now that is being used by swing voters and current and former Conservatives alike.
And we're looking at your word cloud on the screen. So this is all the words that appeared in relation to the Prime Minister, but the most prominent and the most commonly brought up was the word liar, as you can see in the middle.
Yeah.
I suppose it goes in order of regularity, so the ones furthest out least brought up.
Though interesting, it kept the Speaker busy yesterday, didn't it? Omitting that particular word from any debate.
Yes, and I think an MP shouted, "Look at the word cloud" at the Prime Minister, which wasn't quite expected when we put it together. But look, it is a serious situation for Boris Johnson and the Conservatives. I expect they are seeing the same thing, because you would have seen a story late last week showing that actually Boris Johnson is not appearing on many local election leaflets. There wasn't a formal local election launch.
Yeah.
That often tells you a lot more about what the political parties are seeing in their private polling, as exactly the same happened with Corbyn.
James, I'd love you to break down for me, if you could, you talk about a serious situation. Can the public distinguish? It will often be said Ukraine is much more important than this. It's very, very serious. It's much more serious than so-called Partygate. Can the public actually distinguish between the two, or do they agree with that train of thought?
They can absolutely distinguish between the two, and I think the lesson of the last 4 months in terms of public opinion has been the public are very capable of holding two thoughts in their mind at the same time. On the one hand, they do think that Ukraine is very important, and they do think that Boris Johnson has done a good job on Ukraine, and they think the UK is showing world leadership. But at the same time, they are also able to be very angry and furious about Partygate. And this is what I think some commentators and some analysts are slightly missing, is that even if voters want to move on, that doesn't mean they're going to vote for the Prime Minister anymore. You know, it's move on, not going to vote for him. And that's a really difficult thing. You know, the brand damage of Partygate is going to last beyond the story, I think, in voters' minds.
And is that something you'd agree with Tom Harwood then? Do you think, is that the mood music that you're hearing? And I suppose critically it will be what the MPs think in the next couple of days with this vote on Thursday.
No, I spent a long time last night talking to Conservative MPs immediately after that extraordinary session of the House of Commons, but also after that party meeting at 8 p.m. last night when the Prime Minister spoke to almost rally the troops, in a sense. And I just didn't get the sense that this was a Prime Minister that was on the edge of something. I didn't get the sense that there was the same jeopardy that was faced, particularly among those 2019 intake MPs, the ones who were almost plotting to remove the Prime Minister 3 months ago. They seem to be much more on board now. And potentially this was because when the Ukraine crisis hit and Partygate moved out of the news agenda, we did see a shift in the polls. We did see that gap between Labour and the Conservatives start to close again, go down to 3 or 4 points in some polls, down from double digits. So I think amongst MPs there is a sense that this is recoverable, just not whilst it's being spoken about all the time.
James, Tom says recoverable. Maybe it's called keeping your powder dry for the MPs, because they are waiting, your polls say, for three things. They're waiting to see what happens with further fines, waiting for the Sue Gray report, local elections and the by-election in Wakefield.
Yeah, and I think those electoral moments are going to be really significant for MPs. I do think there is a risk, though, that MPs look for really, really bad results and take quite bad results as a good reading for them.
Yes.
The Conservatives don't need a John Major-style election defeat, 1997-style wipeout, in order to lose power. They can lose their majority while being ahead in votes in a general election. So this is really, I think, a question of not are we looking at a massive wipeout in May, but actually is this something that we can weather for the long term? And I think increasingly there is a gulf widening between what Tory MPs think and what the public think. And there is a real risk that bad but not horrendous results in May might mean that Tory MPs say this is fine, and actually they carry on sleepwalking into a very difficult election result in 2024.
Thank you. James Johnson, pollster from JL Partners. Thank you very much indeed. And Tom Harwood. Tom's show begins at 9:30 today. Thanks, Tom.
Now, it's day 56 of the invasion of Ukraine, and Russia is continuing its large-scale assault on the Donbass, capturing the city of Crimea. Ukrainian authorities say the intensity of fire by Russian troops towards Kharkiv, Dnipro and the Donbass region has increased significantly, while the situation in Mariupol remains deadlocked, with Russian army reportedly blocking attempts at creating humanitarian corridors. Well, President Zelensky made clear that the Ukraine would continue to battle any attempted advance by the Kremlin. Let's get more now on this from the former chair of the British Joint Intelligence Committee, Baroness Pauline Neville-Jones. Very good morning to you. Look, first of all, your assessment then of the latest developments from the Donbass, which seems to be a very significant shift, this second phase in the war, and the bad news overnight of Crimea falling to the Russians. Do you think that the West is responding swiftly enough? We've had fair warning that this second phase was going to happen. Should Crimea have fallen?
I think it's very hard to tell from a distance, and indeed I think there's a bit of dispute about whether it has actually fallen. But you put your finger on a very key issue, which is, are we able and are we indeed arming and rearming the Ukrainians with the speed and with the kind of weapons that they actually need? I do think that the efforts of the NATO allies have speeded up a great deal, but there is a good question. Whether you can get enough in fast enough, and whether you can get stuff in that the Ukrainians are going to be either easily trained on or already understand and know, because we're supplying things which were formerly Soviet kit, which some NATO allies still have, and it's not clear, I think, from outside whether all of that is happening. I think the effort to do it has greatly increased. I think it's a separate question whether you can get everything there in time. And of course, you've got to get it not only into Ukraine, but you've got to get it across Ukraine as well. And the Russians will be alive to that, and they will seek to disrupt, of course.
Yeah, and the Ministry of Defence have this morning confirmed that that is a concern, Baroness, absolutely. They've said Russian attacks on cities across Ukraine show their intent to try and disrupt the movement of Ukrainian reinforcements and weaponry to the east of the country, and that is their update this morning. Yeah. Look, the line's not particularly good, so I'm only going to ask you one more question and we have to let you go. But I just want to talk about what's on the front of the Telegraph this morning. They're talking about Germany increasingly isolated as the West send in heavy arms. They also talk about Italy in that article as well, as being very slow to respond to these calls from President Zelensky. Is there a risk, as we are on day 56, as people begin to tire, as the effects of having to try and use less Russian gas kicks in, that these schisms within the response will begin to widen?
Yes, I think there is a real risk. And you've got a fundamental, I think, division between those countries which are very dependent on Russian gas and oil, and those who are far less dependent. And Italy and Germany fall into the category of extremely dependent. And in effect, what they're saying is we can't give up the motor on which our economy actually turns, i.e., power. So I think we do have a serious problem there. The Americans are trying to help with releasing their stockpile, and there may be other sources. The difficulty, of course, is the time it takes actually to find replacement sources. So I think the unity of the West is quite a fragile thing, and the Russians, of course, know that. And the Russians are there for the long term. We shouldn't actually underestimate the extent to which they will persist in actually continuing their effort, hoping in the end to outlast Western willingness to help the Ukrainians.
Yeah, it is a very valid point indeed. Look, Baroness Pauline Neville-Jones, we have to leave it there, former chair of the British Joint Intelligence Committee. Good to have you on the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
16 minutes past 8 o'clock. A very good morning to you on this Wednesday morning. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has apologised to MPs for breaking COVID laws during lockdown in June 2020.
He addressed the Commons for the first time since he was fined before holding a private meeting with Conservative politicians last night. The former Chief Whip, Mark Harper, published a letter saying he lost confidence in Boris Johnson and he's no longer worthy of being Prime Minister.
Prince Harry says the Queen was on great form when he and his wife Meghan visited her in Windsor last week. In an interview today with NBC's Breakfast Show, the Duke of Sussex added he wanted to make sure Her Majesty was protected and had the right people around her.
Well, let us know what you think about that story, and I suppose lots of the stories we've been covering this morning. Had an email in from Steve, says, Eamonn and Isabel, you stole the thoughts out of my head this morning. Harry hasn't been around for a good couple of years, and all of a sudden he's worried about the Queen being protected. I wonder why he has decided to come out of the woodwork.
Netflix. Anyway, the cladding crisis has been a major housing issue around the country ever since Grenfell Tower in 2017.
The incident, of course, revealed thousands of other buildings which had been clad in dangerously combustible materials.
The Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, has announced developers have pledged a combined £5 billion to remove the cladding, but campaigners have pointed out this falls well short of the £8 billion it's estimated to actually cost.
Well, our reporter Ellie Costello joins us in Westminster, where cladding campaigners are protesting a little bit later today. Good morning to you, Ellie.
Well, good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. Yes, as you say, this is an issue that affects hundreds of thousands of people all over the UK. And today at about lunchtime, there are going to be hundreds of people protesting here, and they are members of the End Our Cladding Scandal campaign. They are calling on the government to lead an urgent effort to fix this cladding crisis. Well, I'm joined by a member of that group now, Paul Afshar. Good morning to you, Paul, and thank you so much for joining us on Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel. So why are you protesting today?
Well, this is personal for me, like many of the people who are at the protest today. My flat is a clad flat. It's unsellable. I've been stuck with it for 2 years. And this is years after the Grenfell tragedy as well. Now, the problem with me is that my developer hasn't stumped up any cash, and it doesn't look like they will at all. So you've got people like myself up and down the country, all over, who are wondering who's actually going to pay for the bill that's going to come through, which is potentially tens of thousands of pounds.
And give us an indication of quite how widespread this problem is, because this isn't just Grenfell, is it? And it's not just London.
That's absolutely right. It's people like myself who've bought their first property in good faith. It's also people who are at retirement age who've used their retirement savings to invest in a nest egg. So you're talking about at any age all over the country, in big cities, in small towns.
We've just been hearing from the government. They've revealed a wide-ranging agreement that will see the industry contribute £5 billion to address the building safety scandal. You say, and your group says, that this doesn't go far enough, do you?
Doesn't nearly go far enough. It's a step in the right direction. Parliament itself has talked about a bill of £15 billion just to solve the cladding crisis. So this is a bit of the way there, but not all of the way there, I'm afraid.
What more needs to be done? What will you be calling for specifically today at lunchtime?
What I would like Michael Gove to do is back up his tough words with tough action. If he's said that developers who aren't going to contribute will be blacklisted from government contracts and from building, then he absolutely needs to follow that up. I will have a lot less anxiety and a lot fewer sleepless nights if my developer is brought to the table by force, in this case by government.
You touched upon it there. This is something that really affects you, isn't it? It affects your daily life.
It is. My entire life has been put on pause. I can't really sort of get rid of the flat. I can't plan anything for the future. I've just recently got engaged, but really can't do very much about that, to be honest, because we are stuck in this horrendous Groundhog Day with dangerous cladding on the property.
Well, Paul, if Michael Gove was here now, the Minister of Levelling Up, what would you say to him?
Bring all the developers to the table by any means necessary. Otherwise, government needs to stump up the funding and get it back from the industry.
Paul, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and I probably will see you a little bit later on at the protest. Well, Isabel and Eamonn, the government say they're going to ensure that all leaseholders are fully protected in the building safety bill, which they say will become law in the next few weeks. But as you just heard from Paul there, this is a really emotive issue. We're stood not even 5 miles from the site of Grenfell Tower, where 72 people lost their lives 5 years ago. So we will be expecting hundreds of people out here at lunchtime.
Ellie, thank you very much indeed. With that, we'll take a break. Coming up next, meet the nurse who took action over her diabetes diagnosis. This was a particularly dangerous one. She's basically lost half her body weight. Has it worked? After the weather.
Hello, good morning. I'm Stephen Keats with your latest Met Office forecast. The next few days offer a warmer day today, but then it will turn cloudy towards the end of this week as we pick up this brisk easterly wind and temperatures for some of us coming down a bit. But first thing this morning, though, we've got a fair amount of sunshine out there, particularly for parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland once the fog lifts. Elsewhere, of course, England and Wales, variable amounts of clouds. It won't be sunny everywhere, but most places will see some sunshine at times through the day. Perhaps a cloud across parts of Wales and southwest England, thick enough in the afternoon for a few showers, but far less showers than what we saw through the course of yesterday. And for many of us, it will be a warmer day away from east coast with that breeze coming in off the sea. Highs in the south this afternoon, probably 18, 19, perhaps 20 degrees. Now, any showers we do have during this evening will soon fade away. 1 or 2 for northwest Scotland for a time as well. And then into Thursday morning, I think a lot of dry, fine weather around. Again, some clear spells, but I think areas of cloud will occasionally ingress from the North Sea across parts of eastern England, parts of the coast of eastern Scotland and northeast England too. And like with recent nights, it'll be chilly in the countryside with perhaps a touch of frost in places, but most towns and cities holding up between 4 and 8 Celsius. Then for tomorrow, then it's a mostly dry picture across the country. We'll start to pick up quite a brisk and gusty easterly wind, and this will bring in areas of cloud off the North Sea from time to time. Not cloudy everywhere, but I think more cloud for many places than what we'll see through the course of today. And again, the coasts of eastern Scotland and northeast England could be quite grey and misty for much of the day. Now, temperatures down a notch on Thursday compared to what we'll see this afternoon, but still highs of 17 or 18 Celsius. Now, for the end of the week, we've got low pressure diving down towards the Bay of Biscay, being some very unsettled weather here. High pressure to the north of the UK, and the net effect of this is this brisk easterly flow. You can see the little bumps in the isobars here, always a sign that to the west of high ground, could see some quite gusty conditions. This will feed in areas of cloud, but some sunny spells for Thursday. More cloud, though, generally for Friday and Saturday. A few showers by this stage as well. And whilst west is generally best for temperatures, generally speaking, it's a bit cooler.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good to see you again. Thanks for watching Breakfast here on GB News and listening to us. Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster here.
Still to come on the show, it is the iconic football jersey, which could fetch, would you believe, £6 million. That blows my mind. I can't really understand it. We're going to be at the Sotheby's auction house in central London in around 20 minutes' time. It is the famous shirt of Diego Maradona, so perhaps that explains it. He wore it during that 1986 World Cup quarter-final, and it is going under the hammer.
It's the infamous shirt. It's the Hand of God
Yeah, you get it, for sure.
Medical matters. 9 o'clock today, we're talking about Liam Gallagher, who is 49 years of age, struggling badly with arthritis, but he says he'd rather use a wheelchair than turn to hip replacement surgery. Speaking to someone who's had it twice, I can give you my view. We'll also meet the specialist who says the singer should rethink his options.
And as always, we want to hear from you, so do get in touch on email gbviews@gbnews.uk. We can tweet us at gbviews.
Right, now let's talk about the silent killer. Numbers out today show a significant backlog in diabetes care, which has the potential to put lives at risk. But joining me now, a nurse who says you can do something about it by overhauling your lifestyle. And her name is Christine Louise Barnett. And boy, Christine, you have had an overhaul. So you've halved your body weight, basically.
Yeah, I started at 21 stone, 13 pounds, and I'm now down to 11.5 stone.
Well, congratulations to you. People are going to say straight away, well done, but how on earth did you do that?
I did it with a product called Exante, which is it's a very low calorie diet, and basically it's shakes, bars, meal replacements, and you use about 800 calories a day. As well, I walked a lot. We had a dog, and we tend to walk between 3 and 4 miles a day.
Well, we put up there the sign. I mean, absolutely incredible. I do applaud you. Anybody who needs to lose weight knows how difficult and how dedicated you must have been to do that. But we have a sign which says reversing diabetes, which is completely wrong, because you can't reverse diabetes, but you can put it into remission, as I understand it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So tell us where you were at, what you were taking, what medication you were on, and where you are now.
So initially, when I was first diagnosed with diabetes, I was on metformin, 500 milligrams 3 times a day. Through weight loss, I managed to get that down to just once a day, and now I'm completely off the medication and in remission.
That's amazing. Now, there has to be big pressure on you because you, Christine, being a nurse and all of that, there must have been other pressure where, you can't really educate, talk to or lecture other people who may have diabetes or may have weight problems when you had all of this yourself.
Yeah, it can be quite difficult. I mean, I'm in a nice situation now because I've been in that experience where I have been overweight and I have lost it, so I can prove that it can be done. And initially when I started to lose the weight, I felt like it was an uphill struggle sort of thing, but I just took each stone at a time.
Look, I mean, this is brilliant, but when we get down to the facts of all of this, how was the diabetes affecting you? Because we're talking about, it is known as a silent killer, and we have people backlog just building up because of the pandemic. People they don't initially feel a lot of problems with it, but the problems are there and they get worse. What was happening to you? What was happening to your body?
So initially we got a dog, and when I first started going out walking, I was finding it difficult just doing a very small walk around the block. So I was getting quite out of breath. As well, I have high blood pressure, which can be another problem associated with diabetes. Another sort of like the GPs do a diabetic review every 12 months. And they look at the risk of getting cardiovascular disease in later life, which my score was initially. But on my last diabetic review, I'd actually halved that score. So I think it's probably my life expectancy.
And were you having any loss of sensation, any neuropathy in your fingers or your feet or anything like that?
I didn't have any of that, luckily. It was mainly just the high blood pressure associated with it. But again, that's really well under control. And I've actually managed to stop one of my high blood pressure medications as well.
Yes. But this is not just about reducing weight and reducing your blood pressure. This is about controlling your sugars, which anybody who suffers from diabetes will know is very, very difficult because almost everything has sugar in it, whether natural or artificial. Do you still have to do that?
No, I don't need to monitor my blood sugars at all now because I'm completely in remission.
Yeah.
And I just, obviously because I've had diabetes, I'm very aware of my diet, and obviously being on Exante, it gave me, it sort of re-educated my brain as such. Eating healthier.
That's a particular sort of medications, aren't they? Tell us about that.
Exante, it's a meal replacement product.
All right. Yeah.
So it's you replace your food with shakes and bars. And have a 200-calorie meal as well.
Well, you're a hero. You're a great example to so many people. People who think, well, I can't do it. I can't lose 1 stone, 2 stone, 3 stone. There you are, having lost, 11 stone in all of this? Or 10, certainly 10, yeah. So what would you say, Christine, final word to you. The concern is there is a backlog in diabetes care. And if you're not diagnosed, you're living with a danger, it's putting your life at risk. What would you say, what would your message be to people?
There needs to be education and support out there, and there is support networks such as Exante, because weight gain is one of the biggest causes of diabetes and being overweight. If you lose the weight, you're likely to, if not reverse your diabetes.
Okay. Christine, congratulations, as we say. Stay healthy, stay diabetes free, and really appreciate you talking to us. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, with the time now just after 8:30, we're going to take a break.
We are, and after that we're going to go through the papers again. David Mellor will be back on top form, I'm sure, joined by the lovely Claire Muldoon as well. See you in a sec.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
With the time at 8:35, let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines. And the Prime Minister has apologised to MPs for breaking COVID laws during lockdown in June 2020. He addressed the Commons for the first time since he was fined before holding a private meeting with his party. Conservative MP and former Chief Whip Mark Harper published a letter saying he's lost confidence in Boris Johnson and he's no longer worthy of being Prime Minister.
For the first time in 3 days, Ukraine has reached what they're calling a preliminary agreement with Russia to open a humanitarian corridor out of the besieged city of Mariupol. The mayor of the port city hopes to evacuate 6,000 civilians today. He says around 100,000 are still trapped there. All of this comes as Western countries agree to send more military support to combat Moscow's increased assault.
And Prince Harry says the Queen was on great form when he and his wife Meghan visited her in Windsor last week. In an interview with an American broadcaster, the Duke of Sussex added he wanted to make sure Her Majesty was protected and had the right people around her. Time now to go through the papers. We're joined this morning by David Mellor and Claire Muldoon. And David, should we start with the front of the Telegraph? Because we were just talking about the West response to Ukraine. And actually, it is worth pointing out, it isn't really a universal response from the West.
No,
there are divisions, and those seem to be getting wider.
Yes, and that's why, it's such a treat for me to find something nice to say about Boris, so allow me to revel in it. That's why Boris has helped shore up Biden, when in fact a lot of the other European leaders have not done very well, including President Macron, who seems rather pathetic, like a child. He's like, Mum, I've spoken to that Mr. Putin. He's really been nice to me, Mum.
But don't you think he's a little bit distracted and has the unfortunate position of trying to
trying to stop an
votes
extreme
off
right-wing
right?
fanatic.
It's not that easy.
But where we get into the bad ground is what is said in the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Germany isolated as West sends heavy arms. We have not noticed
I want to tell
how
you
bad...
about a great offer.
Oh.
That's not me, folks.
We'll talk about that in a moment.
He's a thinner,
actually.
though almost as hairy a person as me. But basically, I'm glad he's thin. I'll swap my hair for being thin. Anyway, basically, where we are with this is that Gerhard Schröder, who was, Chancellor of Germany for a number of years, has been bought and paid for by the Russians.
He's in bed with them.
And we have to also remember that Mrs. Merkel was born in the old East Germany and never really had, for some reason, the aversion to Russia that she should have had. The Germans have allowed themselves to become dependent on Russia when they must have known the dangers, dependent on Russia for gas and other energy sources. And so they are trying to put the brakes on the rest of us who are trying to ensure that the Ukrainians are defended. And I just think what's so pathetic about Germany, Germany, they're like a bad golfer, they're either in the lake on one side of the fairway with a bloke like Hitler, or they're in the clubhouse lawn on the other side of the fairway with cringing people who do not believe that Germany should actually stand for anything. And, the worry from my point of view is as soon as Putin, if he ever had the sense to sort of draw back a bit, these people would be down on their knees saying, thank you, we welcome you back into the community of nations. Whereas I take the view, as do a lot of the papers, that there's no way that Russia can be allowed back in.
OK. Thanks for that, David. We're now going to move to that piece of videotape that you saw there a bit early of Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary. This is an advert where he wants you to get on the train. The prices are going to be slashed in half for certain times of the day. And this is what the Minister is doing to get you to buy your train ticket. Have a look.
I want to tell you about a great offer coming to you. It's the Great British Rail Sale, offering over 1 million advance tickets to passengers with up to a massive 50% off. Why not take a trip to Edinburgh to take in the sweeping views from Arthur's Seat? Or if it's sea and sand that you want, well, head to Cornwall with its stretches of beautiful sand and crashing waves. Or visit the Lake District, the land of dancing daffodils and full of love from Wordsworth's paradise. Or come down to London for a bit of retail therapy. We've had 2 years of living life virtually. It's time to get real and visit our beautiful country.
And cut. Where's he going?
So funny. That'd be
I think he's preparing for when he gets booted out of office and he needs a career.
Well, talk about life imitating art. Grant Shapps was a used car salesman, is now the Minister of Transport. This parody, I mean, it's not even a parody because it's real and people are saying it's gimmicky, but the message is real. The message is, as we've discussed in the summer when we were doing news reviews and discussed it on the breakfast show in the early summer, it's cheaper to fly in this country to other cities within the British Isles than it is to take the train. When often it should be the train is the easiest way. You don't need to go through customs. There is no extra baggage charged. And it's a nicer way to travel, especially if you've got children or an elderly relative or a disabled member of your family or friend that needs to go with you. The gimmick is, and the message is, for 1 month, and I've actually checked it on my apps before I came on, from the 25th of April to the 27th of May, you've got 50% reduction on train fares, which is great, I think, for everybody to go and see parts of the British Isles. It is valid off-peak times when that's when you would want to travel with your family to get away. You don't want to travel with commuters, and commuters certainly don't want to travel with families or hen weekends or stag do's. And it's 50% off, as I said. So I think that's a really good pointer. I think it has to be done. I think the infrastructure of rail in this country is absolutely diabolical. It has to be helped. I mean, I know in Scotland, the First Minister has renationalised the railways. Well, hopefully that will go to plan because she renationalised the ferries, and that's a complete disaster. But we just need to hope and trust in God that this is a fine. And the other point on that advert that Grant Shapps is in, I just don't know who's advising him. However, he has said it's because we were dealing with a virtual reality situation during lockdown. And if you look at the video, without cringing, you can see in parts, it's completely made up, completely green screened. And I think that was the message. And it's just been cobbled together, really.
Yeah.
But, you know, the trouble with Grant Shapps, he had an interesting background and they allowed him back as a minister. And I wouldn't say Grant Shapps is perhaps an ace for integrity. And I tell you something, every time I look at him, I think one day it will be revealed that he is the illegitimate son of Jeffrey Archer, because there's an essential spuriousness about him that he obviously has got from Jeffrey, his fake dad. But, you know, how could any minister... I mean, I remember when I had to do the AIDS brief, and... you know, we had lots of interesting, serious Hollywood directors who were doing the films for us. All I did was sign it off. I suppose I could have gone in there, stuck a needle in my arm and said, this is where you get... But, you know, why do these people insist on going in front of camera? It's an essential spuriousness in his judgment that I just think is awful and appalling.
An increase in politicians who are sort of becoming sort of household... sort of minor celebrities.
Watching him with his khaki T-shirt on, you could be forgiven for thinking it was Zelensky. Yeah. It seems to be Zelensky's popularity has increased so much that I think politicians are so absurdly full of themselves and their own self-importance that they think that the message to get across to us as voters is by trying to be someone on the ground.
That is so much the point. I mean, if Grant Shapps had any self-awareness, and he was asked, out of 1,000 people looking at this advert, how many are going to be more impressed by you at the end? You'd be hard put to find one or two. I mean, it's just so spurious is the word.
All right. We go to the front page of The Sun, Claire, and this is rocker Liam Gallagher, and time has caught up in him. He's 49 years of age and he's been told he needs new hips.
Well, that could have been you 2 or 3 years ago, couldn't it?
No, I was told in my mid to late 20s that I needed a double hip replacement, and I carried on until I was 55, which was completely the wrong thing to do, and if I had life to live over again.
That's interesting, because he's actually saying that he might not go for the surgery, or he knew he would need this done because of the arthritis brought on with another symptom.
Well, his hips are going to last him, unless he's a marathon runner, his hips are going to last him at least 25 years. So what's he waiting on?
Well, he doesn't want to die. He doesn't want to die on the table. He doesn't want the pain.
Oh.
So I think he wants to roll with it in a wheelchair with Debbie pushing him.
Well, I got 2 done at once. I got 2 whipped out and 2 new ones put in.
Was it the most horrendous pain?
It was the most horrendous pain before I had them, and then, of course, afterwards there's recuperation, you know, my wife had to be the nurse throughout all of this. So
Gosh, love that.
I decided to go to a recuperation centre for 2 weeks, really, instead. So
I think Ruth paid for it. I think she sent it and booked it.
She booked it for 6 months. I said, only need 2 weeks to be there. But the point I'm making here is that often this is deemed to be something that happens to people.
Older people.
Yeah, in their 70s or whatever
Yeah.
it is. No, this happens at all ages and stages of life.
No, but do you know what? For a rocker, it's not great PR. It's not good optics, is it? To
Well,
have a
it's
hip
not.
replacement. Liam Gallagher, for me, will forever be 27 or something. You know,
I know,
flicking the bees
and he's definitely got star
and
quality.
now he's suddenly.
But he lives with the pain. That's all. You know,
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
talk about
We were
optics
talking
all you
about
want.
Cannabis earlier.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more than that goes on to help
Yep.
him with his pain.
There would be. Have you got all your bits, David? Have you?
I've got all my
replaced?
bits.
Yeah.
I've not had any bit removed.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of people who would like me to have some bits.
I think on that note, we'll draw this to a close. It's
Thank
been
you
a pleasure,
both. Thank
as
you.
always, David, Claire. Thank you very much. Come back soon.
Lovely to have two of you, the dream team there. Thank you very much indeed. One of the most controversial football shirts in history. Be interested in David's opinion in this. So this is the Hand of God, Maradona's shirt, right up for sale. Do you know they're expecting a bid of £6 million on this? From who?
That's ridiculous.
But who's selling it?
Well, let's find out now. We're going to go to our reporter on this, who's Paul Hawkins, and he'll tell us lots more about not only that shirt, but the other things that are up for auction. Paul. Wait a minute, have we just...
Oh, what a shame. We just lost him. So he was outside Sotheby's in Mayfair. We'll see if we can re-establish that link. But £6 million. I mean, I do sometimes find the whole concept of spending huge amounts of money for memorabilia a little bit bizarre.
Whereas I must say that one of the most disappointing evenings of my life, and there have been many, was having the opportunity to spend time with Maradona at Wembley.
Oh, wow.
And of course, it wasn't just that his English was poor, but it just wasn't anything very interesting about him unless he was on that football pitch. But the one
Dare
person...
I say that's true of many.
I took to the game Nigel Kennedy, the violinist, and he said, meeting Maradona, proudest moment of my life, maestro, he said. So I did somebody a favour.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Maybe he'll be bidding.
Do you have any memorabilia?
On the shirt?
No,
not
into
I
that.
collect lots of things, but football stuff, no.
No, I've got a Hooray for George mug. That's about it.
A what?
Hooray for George!
Who's Hooray for
George?
Prince George, when he was born, they did commemorative mugs, and Emma Bridgewater brought some out. My godmother sent it to me. I think some days it might be worth £6 million. Who knows?
Well,
Anyway.
let's go to Paul Hawkins. I think there's something else he's got for sale, which is Bobby Moore's 1966 World Cup shirt.
That's 50 grand.
Which is not, might be different.
I've just handled that.
Right, Paul, tell us more.
Yeah, morning Eamonn, morning Isabel. This shirt, worn by Maradona. Maradona is one of those figures who is not just bigger than football, he's probably bigger than sport, because even if you know nothing about football, nothing about sport, and you're not even interested in sport or football, you know who Maradona is. And probably his most iconic game, certainly for Argentina, was at the 1986 World Cup final in Mexico. The shirt he wore when England were beaten 2-0 by Argentina. Scored two very famous goals in that game. The first one, controversially, the Hand of God goal, when Steve Hodge, the England player with whom he swapped the shirt after the match, flicked the ball up and it looped into the air, and as it came down, Peter Shilton rose to catch it, and Maradona somehow, a very short man, rose and punched it in the goal. And let's be honest, he cheated, right? But he wheeled away, the officials didn't see it, the England players were protesting, and it went on to be known as the Hand of God goal, because after the game they said, how did you do that? And he said, well, it was a little bit of the Hand of God and it was a little bit of my hand. So that's how that came to be known. And then a short while later, he scored one of the most incredible goals you've ever seen, where he collects the ball on the halfway line, pivots, runs past about 3 or 4 England players, rounds Peter Shilton, sticks it in the net, and then wheels away towards the crowd on his knees. Called the goal of the century, and he did it all in that shirt, which is up for auction here at Sotheby's. Steve Hodge has pulled it out of his collection. I haven't been able to find out whether Steve Hodge actually did get the shirt cleaned or not, but he pulled it out of his collection, and it's going to be going under auction here for 2 weeks online. It's going to start at £4 million. I would say it's almost certainly going to become it's going to break the record for a shirt that's been worn after a game. That's held by Babe Ruth's Yankees Road jersey, which sold for $4.3 million in 2019. I'm sure it's going to break that here today.
Top tip for you, Paul, if you are covering that auction and going in there a little bit later, no sudden movements. We might find yourself in a bit of debt. Anyway, lovely to see you, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Watching that with great interest. Memorabilia expert Charles Hanson joins us now, and he's brought in another example of something that's very, very collectible. And I'm going to show you an England shirt. It's from 1966. It's the semi-final that England played in and worn by
Bobby Charlton.
Yeah, he scored that day too, didn't he?
It was an amazing day. It was July 66. It was that game. It was Eusebio's Portugal team, and Charlton scored 2 goals. And obviously the West German final was history made, and our only ever World Cup win. And this shirt will be selling in November. It's match worn, it's a bit tired.
Which I don't think would go against it, but what might go against it is he signed it. It's written to Bill, best wishes, Bobby Charlton. Do these things, does your heart sink when you see these sort of...
Eamonn, to me, it gives provenance. It tells the story from start to finish. And in the whole footballing world now, this memorabilia market is huge. And the provenance is so important to add value to its history.
Do you know what all the stains are? There's quite a lot of stains.
Bit of mud.
Down
Still
the front
to be
of it.
forensically identified.
As to what actually they are. I don't know if you can see those or not. But anyway, here is, there's the number and everything, just sort of show you that. But great example.
Yeah, look, what is it about memorabilia that, you know, is it a particularly British thing that we love to collect items from our heroes, or is it just, you know, a human instinct that if you've got a hero, you want a little slice of them?
I think we look at the market, and football's only become really popular last 25 to 30 years. And if you bought things back in the late 90s, you'd have made a fortune now. Will this Maradona shirt make £4 million? I don't know. I think it's being tainted slightly by what maybe Diego's daughter has said. We know it's a shirt for sure. It's that second half shirt in which he scored 2 goals. But it's a lot of money, £4 to £6 million. A record for any sporting memorabilia piece we know is that baseball jersey. Here in England, that record is Bobby Moore's shirt, of Pele's shirt he swapped, which made £180,000 about 5 years ago. So it's a huge number. I'm not so sure.
Listen, I have been to so many dinners, fundraisers, where sports memorabilia is for sale, and I look at it and I go, useless. It's not worth anything now. It'll not be worth anything in the future. It's a replica shirt from 1966, signed by a player in 2000, whatever. It's worth very, very little. People buy a lot of rubbish, don't they?
It's funny, I think 25 years ago we were buying football caps, but now there's a huge passion more and more for football. Let's not forget the Premiership is celebrating its 30th year very shortly. So we're seeing football shirts really increase in value. And I would say, you know, the next big thing we're looking at in the world of memorabilia is ladies' football. That's a really growing area. And we're expecting, again, in 20 years, early women football regalia, shirts, etc., to be, you know, more and more popular on the market.
What about Commonwealth memorabilia with the Platinum Jubilee coming up, or any sort of royal, you know, I'm thinking of my Hooray for George mug. You know, could there be some stuff that will be valuable in the future from this year? Because the Queen, let's face it, it's her birthday tomorrow. She's nearing the end of her reign. Not suggesting imminently, but nearing the end.
Yeah, I think, you know, all sorts of royal memorabilia are popular. It's those unique objects. Once I sold a piece of toast that Prince Charles left on his wedding day.
Oh, that's just weird.
So on his wedding day in July 81, he left one piece of toast with his boiled egg, and my client, who was then a lady in the royal family, she gave it to me to sell, and it made £1,000. So it's those more quirky, raw, collectible objects, not so much the coronation mugs, it's those more unique items more closely associated with the royal family.
But it's also getting them authenticated is the problem. I bought Eric Cantona's Return of the Magnificent Seven shirt until I saw that I bid for it remotely, but until I saw it was short-sleeved, and he wore a long-sleeve shirt that day. So it's how things are passed off on you. Though it did have the very, very lovely scent on it. It wasn't body odour, it was like, you know, French scent.
A bit of ooh la la. But I do think...
A bit of ooh la la, quite.
I think a bit of 80s, 90s football, knowing those footballers now, and with their provenance is where the market will be tomorrow.
I love the way you say that, provenance.
I have Roy Keane's shirt from the day that, you remember Man United were walloped by Southampton and they wore the grey shirts and they changed them at half-time.
Yeah.
I got Roy Keane's shirt that day.
Anything iconic like that, not the Kung Fu kick though, was it?
Sorry,
not the big kick he did in the crowd.
No, not that day. No. But Madonna's one's all about cheating. Maradona. Madonna may have played as well.
Altogether.
That's another
Charles
story.
Hanson, we have to leave it there. Memorabilia expert, thank you very much for bringing that in and
Thank
talking
you.
to us this morning. We'll be back in just a few moments. See you then.
Hello, good morning. I'm Stephen Keats with your latest Met Office forecast. The next few days offer a warmer day today, but then it will turn cloudier towards the end of this week as we pick up this brisk easterly wind and temperatures for some of us coming down a bit. But first thing this morning though, we've got a fair amount of sunshine out there, particularly for parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland once the fog lifts. Elsewhere across England and Wales, variable amounts of clouds. It won't be sunny everywhere, but most places will see some sunshine at times through the day. Perhaps a cloud across parts of Wales and southwest England, thick enough in the afternoon for a few showers, but far less showers than what we saw through the course of yesterday. And for many of us, it will be a warmer day away from east coast with that breeze coming in off the sea. Highs in the south this afternoon, probably 18, 19, perhaps 20 degrees. Now, any showers we do have during this evening will soon fade away. 1 or 2 for northwest Scotland for a time as well. And then into Thursday morning, I think a lot of dry, fine weather around. Again, some clear spells, but I think areas of cloud will occasionally ingress from the North Sea across parts of eastern England, parts of the coast of eastern Scotland and northeast England too. And like with recent nights, it'll be chilly in the countryside with perhaps a touch of frost in places, but most towns and cities holding up between 4 and 8 Celsius. Then for tomorrow, then it's a mostly dry picture across the country. We'll start to pick up quite a brisk and gusty easterly wind, and this will bring in areas of cloud off the North Sea from time to time. Not cloudy everywhere, but I think more cloud for many places what we'll see through the course of today. And again, the coasts of eastern Scotland and northeast England could be quite grey and misty for much of the day. Now, temperatures down a notch on Thursday compared to what we'll see this afternoon, but still highs of 17 or 18 Celsius. Now, for the end of the week, we've got low pressure diving down towards the Bay of Biscay, being some very unsettled weather here. High pressure to the north of the UK, and the net effect of this is a brisk easterly flow. You can see the little bumps in the isobars here, always a sign that to the west of high ground, could see some quite gusty conditions. This will feed in areas of cloud, but some sunny spells for Thursday. More cloud, though, generally for Friday and Saturday. A few showers by this stage as well. And whilst west is generally best for temperatures, generally speaking, it's a bit cooler.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Prime Minister apologises to Parliament and vows to get on with the job as a former Tory Chief Whip calls on him to resign.
Very good to see you just after 9 o'clock. It's a Wednesday morning, halfway through the week, the 20th of April. You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning.
He doesn't respect the sacrifice of the British public. He is a man without shame.
The Prime Minister faced calls to resign last night as he apologised to Parliament, saying he acknowledged the hurt and anger. Former Tory Chief Whip Mark Harper rounded on the PM, saying he was no longer worthy of his office.
Also this morning, the singer Liam Gallagher has said he'd rather use a wheelchair than consider hip replacements for his arthritis. We're going to be talking to a surgeon who says, think again, Liam, that operation could change your life.
And let us know your thoughts about this morning. Prince Harry has told an NBC morning show that he's making sure the Queen is protected and has the right people around her. It comes ahead of the monarch's 96th birthday tomorrow.
Thanks for joining in our conversations this morning. GB Views at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News. So what we wanted to major on for this section of the programme was this story, front page of The Sun, for instance, and in most of the papers today, about the rocker Liam Gallagher. He says he's got really bad arthritis. He needs both his hips replaced, but he's saying, not for me, not for me. I'd rather be in a wheelchair than go through the operation.
Yeah, so he's at the grand old age of 49, so pretty young to be talking about this. But actually, you've got experience in this. Not only have you had one, but you've had two, and you were advised to have them in your 20s.
In my 20s, at 27 or so, and so my hips were, well, they were what were called restricted hips. Most people's hips are round, like that, the ball and socket, where mine were sort of egg-shaped, and there was no cartilage.
From birth.
And so there was no cartilage around them. So I could always walk like that. That's okay. But what I could never do was lift my leg over a gate or over the back of a horse or over a bike or whatever. So I couldn't spread my legs.
Couldn't get your leg over.
Couldn't, literally could not do that. But the thing about it was the diagnosis. So I was told, 27, get them done. Now, I had a fear then that what's the technology going to be like? I don't want to have to go through this again in my 40s, for instance. Very young. So I waited until I was 55, and I have to say, Isabel, I regret waiting that long.
Because you did damage in the interim.
It wasn't a nice experience. I mean, you were constantly in pain, you were restricted. I just wish I had have got them done earlier.
And do you think that has linked to, because you still have some problems with I know it's your sciatic nerve, but is that all linked, do you think, to your hips?
Not at all.
Totally different.
Totally different.
Not just from wear and tear.
That's to do with wear and tear on my discs. Now, this is a man, an expert in his field, Dr. Arunja Imbildenia, who joins us now, and he's been listening to what we had to say there. Doc, you see the headline. You've heard my story about this. So I had bilateral hip replacement 5 years ago. And as I say, I just wish I had have gone earlier and had it done younger.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really common scenario. Lots of patients who have the surgery really, really wish they'd done it earlier. It's a really successful procedure. So there's lots of procedures we do, but actually hip replacements, definitely one of the best ones in terms of happy patients and great patient outcomes. I think there's definitely still a stigma around having a hip replacement. A lot of my patients, probably over half my patients, are in their 40s and 50s. And certainly I think when they get the news that their hip joints are fairly worn out and they might benefit from a hip replacement, they're often fairly shocked and horrified, and they don't feel they need it, because they think it's an operation for sort of old people, is what they say. So there's that perception. And I think when hip replacements were sort of all came about, a few decades ago, they were initially for the elderly and it was just an operation to sort of help people get out to the shop, buy their milk and just do basic things. But nowadays, most of our patients are kind of middle-aged and younger adults, and they're high demand. They want to do lots and lots of things. They want to do, some of my, patients will sort of do things like martial arts or running or dancing. They want to, climb mountains, do all sorts of things. So we know that, and we've sort of adapted our techniques to make people do the things they want to do. But there is that shock, and I think often the best advocate, I think, for the procedure probably isn't a surgeon like me, because I haven't had a hip replacement. You've had them, and I think it's other patients can kind of help future patients, get through the process and answer questions that they might have.
Alternative, when you hear what he's describing, just doesn't sound like a long-term solution. He talks about having to take super strength sleeping tablets every night to help him get to sleep because of the pain. He's saying he'd rather be in a wheelchair being pushed around by Debbie like in Little Britain than undergoing the surgery. I mean, these can't be long-term solutions.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? I think unless you're in the position, I think it's just scary for most people, the thought of having to have surgery, the thought of having to have an anaesthetic. And again, I'm always on the other side. I've not yet been on the patient's side, and I can appreciate how people might feel and how worried they might feel. But essentially, you've just got to, for the patient, they've just got to come to their own conclusions in the end, and they've got to realise that they can't keep going as they are. And people are really different. Some patients can manage and they can get by on painkillers or some physiotherapy, some exercises, maybe like change their lifestyle. But others are just miserable. They can't sleep at night. They can't, get into a car, get into a bathtub, get on a bicycle. They can't do things. And if you're that miserable and nothing else has really worked, then it's a really good option. But I guess each patient needs to come to that point, at their own speed, basically.
Yeah. How long would a new hip last these days? People don't want to have to go through this again if they're, in their mid-40s, say.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really common question. I mean, we believe they should last between 20 and 40 years. And maybe even longer. And it kind of depends on a few things. I guess how we put them in as surgeons. So if we put the implants in quite accurately and sort of facing in the correct positions, I guess, then that would help in terms of wearing out the parts. And also the parts themselves, if they're fairly durable, then they last really long. The parts we tend to use now in modern day hip replacements should last much longer than the ones we were putting in back in the sort of 70s and 80s. But to be honest, we don't really know for sure until they've been in people or patients that long. So we trial them in simulation studies with sort of robots sort of bashing the sort of implants over and over again, simulating patients walking and running around in the book.
I have to say, Doctor, I was very aware of the pain and the restriction before I had the replacements. I've never once felt that there was something inside me, that there was this alien object, and they just feel so much part of me and very natural, and I just don't feel them.
It's a really positive thing.
It's as if they're not there, yeah. And my advice to anybody, Doc, would be do the exercises, and if you need the painkillers, take those as well. But you have to do the exercises, it has to be said. Doc, we've got to leave it there. Really appreciate your time and your perspective on things with that big story about Liam Gallagher needing new hips, but he doesn't want them. Dr. Imboldinia is from the West Middlesex University Hospital in London and the Chelsea and Westminster NHS Foundation Trust. Sir, thank you for your time. Have a good day. Thank you.
Right, time now to talk you through the biggest entertainment stories with the showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield live in LA for us. Very good morning to you. And I suppose the obvious place to start, Kinsey, is this, I suppose, only way to describe it is as a showbiz trial. And everyone was expecting lots of mud to be slung between Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, and they haven't been disappointed.
Well, yeah. So yesterday was the first day that we had Johnny Depp on the stand, and he's really going through his childhood and an abusive mother who sounds quite similar to his relationship with Amber Heard. And, you know, actually some fun facts about how Nicolas Cage is who got him into acting in the first place. I think Wednesday today, we're going to hear much more details about the abuse that Johnny Depp is really alleging he received from Amber Heard. He said it's really important to him. He's obsessed with clearing his name and he's obsessed with getting the truth out, and that he feels like this is really unfair to his children, that they are having to deal with some of the accusations that Amber Heard has made towards Johnny Depp. So I do believe that it's going to get much more interesting. The judge has been really aggressive about a timeline that she's given both parties, and we've got 4 weeks left. And she said, you know, she's asking, is this evidence, is this testimony necessary in regards to some of the previous witnesses, because she wants to move it along and she wants to, you know, she wants to expedite this.
And I would expect they want to expedite it, Kinsey, because it affects, or it has to affect, their professional lives, if they actually work or not. Any evidence or any stories that this is impacting on them being employed?
Absolutely. And that's what Johnny Depp is going to discuss on the stand. He has to prove that Amber Heard's Washington Post op-ed, it affected him negatively and he lost a lot of money. He's asking for $50 million. She's countersuing. She wants $100 million. So he has to prove on the stand that he has lost financial opportunities and relationships with Disney. I know he had a movie with J.K. Rowling. So there are a couple of opportunities that we know for a fact he lost because of these allegations.
Lovely. Lady Gaga is in Vegas. How's that going?
Oh my goodness. Lady Gaga in Vegas. If you want the big crazy monster, I think you might be a little disappointed because this is the jazz and piano residency inspired by her friend Tony Bennett. But yeah, this is great. You've got through April through May to see Lady Gaga at the MGM Hotel. It's really intimate. You get really up close and personal, and they're selling VIP tickets if you're a millionaire and want to hang out with Gaga and get your picture taken. But no, I think that it's a really great opportunity to see one of the world's biggest pop stars and the only person Isabel recognized at the Grammy Awards this year.
Lovely.
And Jennifer Garner has held a food drive at her home for her 50th birthday. What's this all about?
Isn't that so sweet? So for her 50th birthday, she decided to hold a food drive at her home. A lot of her celebrity friends stopped by. There are great pictures of Adam Scott, the comedian there, helping her collect food for the neighborhood charities. I really hope, Isabel and Eamonn, I really hope you have this video, though. Also for her 50th birthday, her friends surprised her with Donny Osmond. She's just staring at her phone. There's like a cute little custom video made where he's singing to her for her birthday. And then all of a sudden, hunky Donny Osmond sneaks up behind her and surprises her, and she falls out. If you don't have the video, please, if you're watching at home, look at Jennifer Garner and Donny Osmond's Instagram accounts. It's the cutest birthday surprise. I mean, I too am a Donny Osmond fan, so I was very excited about this. But a very precious exchange between Jennifer Garner and Donny Osmond for her 50th birthday.
And do you know what? She's so graceful, isn't she, Kinsey? Because all the while her ex is, having a very public engagement with J-Lo. That can't be easy.
No, and I think she was the in-between from J-Lo. So that's got to be hard when your ex goes back to somebody that was before you. It makes you question your whole relationship, I imagine. But she is absolutely so graceful, kind, and just the sweetest. She has the sweetest spirit. She's one of the most relatable celebrities to follow on Instagram.
Relatable. You talk about Donny. Donny and I are never seen in the same room together. People often mistake us for each other. But Kinsey, unbelievable. One day I was appearing on a programme with Donny Osmond. He had a show called The Pyramid Game. And he was recording this, and I was a guest on this. And for the first and only time in my life, I developed a nosebleed. Oh. Now, it was quite a heavy nosebleed. That's what I thought as well. I'd never had a nosebleed. I'd never had one since. And I was literally over a sink, and my nose was running like a tap, just blood coming out of my nose, running like a tap. And the next minute, I feel a towel on my forehead, hitting my forehead, and it was Donny. And Donnie said, hey, buddy, don't worry, this happens to me all the time, buddy. And then he rubbed my back and rubbed my forehead. And there I'm sitting thinking, bleeding, hemorrhaging into this sink. And I'm thinking, Donnie Osmond is rubbing my forehead while I'm bleeding everywhere. Now, you can't get more relatable than that, can you?
What a saint Donny Osmond is. I mean, we knew Soldier of Love was good, but we had no idea that he was such a saint. Oh my, I love that story. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah,
there you go.
I did not expect the showbiz to take that turn, but
well,
you know what?
You know me, there's always
a story.
There's always a story. But there, Kinsey, always lovely talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. We'll take the break and we're going to be back and we're going to be talking royal stories. Prince Harry, what he said about the Queen now. Find out right after this.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. All morning we've been talking about Prince Harry's interview with NBC, where he's expected to talk quite a lot about the Queen. We know in one released clip that he said he makes sure that the Queen is protected and has the right people around her.
Who could he be thinking about? What does he mean by that? And with rumours surrounding his appearance at the Jubilee, would we ever see an end to his rift with his brother, his father, his mother-in-law, his... there's a lot of them. Vanity Fair royal editor and author Kate Nicholl joins us now to look through all of this. Katie, good morning. Lovely to see you.
To both of you. It's nice to see you in person.
Lovely in the flesh.
The Zoom screen.
Though you have a very nice office, or wherever you are at home.
Well, thank you very much.
I always like looking at your wallpaper. It's very, very good. Who is he talking about? I mean, the fact that we heard that this meeting took place last week, and in that 15 minutes, after all the grief he's caused during the past couple of years, he says, Grandma, I want to make sure you've got the right people around you.
I know. The irony of the statement. You do wonder if he's just so deluded in his own la-la world that he just actually doesn't have an awareness of the impact and the interpretation. Because for me, the interpretation is, I don't think he's necessarily having a go at the men in grey or the women in grey, as they actually mostly are at the palace, as he did last time round in Oprah. To me, this feels even more personal. The people who are clearly surrounding and protecting the Queen at the moment are William and Charles. So is this a direct criticism by Harry? I tell you what was very interesting. I spoke to a source very close to the Prince of Wales about this meeting and was told that it was Charles's absolute insistence that he had the meeting with Harry before Harry and Meghan went in to see the Queen. Now, if Harry sees that as gatekeeping and guarding It absolutely is, because I think Charles had some very clear messages for Harry before he went into that meeting. Well, I think there are boundaries here. If you want this to be sorted out, which my understanding is that Harry does, he wants to move on. He wants to move on from this family rift. He wants to be there at the palace Jubilee balcony appearance.
But that's not necessarily moving on. That's moving into.
Moving into, but for Harry, moving on. For everyone else, I think, moving back into the fold. But I think that comes with a caveat. That comes with conditions. And I think the more Harry blabs on TV, the less likely it is that he's going to be back into the fold. I think there's a sense that he's really being tested here.
Interesting timing. Lots has been made of it, of the fact that William was out of the country in the Alps on a skiing trip when Harry and Meghan popped to Windsor briefly.
Very, very convenient.
But it's so sad, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, we all grew up, well, I certainly grew up with the images of them side by side. Diana's absolute loves of her life.
Yes.
She would be so devastated to see where it's got to. You've been writing about the fact that William would like a mediator to try and help them.
Actually, it was Harry who suggested this idea of a mediator, and I heard that word and I thought, well, it sounds very American to me, having someone in. But I think the reason that Harry has suggested it is because things are so bad between him and William that actually maybe someone is needed to come in and help mediate between the two brothers. Now, last time round, that was Charles. Charles was the one who sort of got them together, got them to spend that Christmas together and helped them try and thrash things out. Possibly it needs to be someone else, but clearly things between the brothers are not good. They haven't spoken for many months.
Could it be Kate? Because do you remember when we saw Harry return for the funeral of Prince Philip?
It was
briefly,
Kate who got them together.
And as they were walking in that brief sort of few metres outside the church in Windsor, we saw Kate sort of trying to bring him into the fold and William sort of being a bit more reticent. But could it be her?
Yes, I mean, I think Kate will have a role to play in it. I wonder actually if the Duchess of Cornwall, who I've just done a big piece for her for a Vanity Fair cover story, and I was told by one of her friends that she's really played a big part behind the scenes in helping to forge.
How does that reconcile with the other stories that we're hearing, that Harry's going to bring out a book which he is going to nail the Duchess of Cornwall? He is going for her in this.
And for Charles as well. Well, it doesn't sit very well, does it? And this is the thing with Harry. You sort of hear him say one thing, I want to get things back together, I'd like to be on the balcony, it's been wonderful seeing my grandmother. And then later on this year, we're expecting this big, explosive autobiography. I mean, you don't get $1 million advance without there being some dirt to dish.
Is the problem him or her, meaning Meghan?
You know what? I don't think you can lay everything at Meghan's door. I mean, the very term Megxit suggests that she was responsible for him leaving and everything. I don't actually think that's the case. I've always suspected that she was far more of a catalyst who enabled Harry to do absolutely what he's always wanted to do, which is to get out. He said to me many times before, I wish I wasn't born a prince. I'd like to just be a normal guy. So I don't think we can lay it all at Meghan's door, but I think for a long time he's felt that he hasn't had a voice, that he hasn't been heard. And I think now in America, with this new profile, with his new wife, he does have a stage. How he chooses to play on it is down to him.
His stage is only relevant and only worth money to Netflix.
With the royals.
With the royals.
Absolutely.
If he's photographed with them.
Well, absolutely.
So it's in his interests.
Well, there are absolutely interests. And, let's not forget the Queen has been very magnanimous throughout all of this. She hasn't stripped them of their HRH titles. If these rumours are to believe that they've had an invitation extended to be on the balcony, I mean, I was told by an aide that the Queen has an immense capacity for forgiveness. I think that's a bit of an understatement when you think of everything.
Would her
that Harry
son
and Meghan
Charles, when the Queen leaves, would her son Charles have the same capacity for forgiveness?
Well, of course, it would be down to Charles as to whether Lilibet and Archie actually take those HRH titles or whether he decides to strip them, and that goes as part of his new slimmed-down monarchy. My understanding about that meeting that we talked about earlier between Charles and his son was that it was tense. And quite strong words were had. So I don't think Charles is going to be a pushover in any of this. Let's put it that way.
And you wonder how, as well, he'd respond to Prince Andrew as well. You think that perhaps when he does become king, there won't be so much of this sort of indulgence that the Queen has been bestowing on some.
No, I think he's going to strip things back. I don't think there's going to be any sort of a formal role for Prince Andrew. Whether or not there's a role for Harry is something else. I obviously write for an American audience, and there is a sense over there. I've just come back from doing a series of lectures that if Charles cuts Harry off, it's not good for his public image. And I think that's what's behind the Queen's decision to bring them back for the Jubilee.
That's
a united royal family is a royal family.
That's assuming people care about Harry, and we'll find out.
Let's see how relevant he stays. Let's see.
On the money with all of that, Katie Nicholl, Vanity Fair royal editor and author, and we should say that Katie has a podcast, and that podcast is?
It's called Dynasty, or Dynasty if you're in America, and it launched yesterday, the first of 10 episodes. They are gripping and riveting. I think you'll enjoy them.
Oh, lovely.
Thank you very much indeed. Dynasty.
Thank
Dynasty.
you.
Not to be mistaken with anything that Joan Collins is in. That's it. Toodle pip. See you in the morning from 6. Bye-bye.
Hello, good morning. I'm Stephen Keats with your latest Met Office forecast. The next few days offer a warmer day today, but then it will turn cloudy towards the end of this week as we pick up this brisk easterly wind, and temperatures for some of us coming down a bit. But first thing this morning, though, we've got a fair amount of sunshine out there, particularly for parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland once the fog lifts. Elsewhere, of course, England and Wales, variable amounts of clouds. It won't be sunny everywhere, but most places will see some sunshine at times through the day. Perhaps a cloud across parts of Wales and southwest England, thick enough in the afternoon for a few showers, but far less showers than what we saw through the course of yesterday. And for many of us, it will be a warmer day away from East Coast with that breeze coming in off the sea. Highs in the south this afternoon, probably 18, 19, perhaps 20 degrees. Now, any showers we do have during this evening will soon fade away. 1 or 2 for northwest Scotland for a time as well. And then into Thursday morning, I think a lot of dry, fine weather around. Again, some clear spells, but I think